Welcome to SteeleWatching, which is a podcast for Remington Steele fans. My name is Sara, and I am really, really worried that they fixed our elevator. Really worried.
Oh, fire starter.
We've gone like 4 days now without a fire, but I'm waiting. It's going to happen.
Well, I am Mr. Grumpy. As of today, that's what my name will be, Mr. Grumpy. No, I'm Eric, but okay, yeah, I'm Mr. Grumpy. Anyway.
Well, at least you're not Mr. On Fire. I mean,
well, that's true too.
It could be worse.
Burning down the house. Boo, boo.
Burning down the apartment doesn't have quite the same ring.
That's true. Anyway.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about Season 3, Episode 6, Steal Your Heart Away, which was first aired on November 13th, 1984, and was written by Brian Clemens and directed by Seymour Robbie. Before we do anything, before we get into the synopsis or anything like that, you had a rant. And I want to let you get that off your chest so we can go forward.
You don't want to wait and save it till the appropriate time?
It's up to you. I just thought, I thought maybe it would be like building inside you and
Well, okay. All right. Well, all right. Well, we've talked about in the past about how they gut some of these shows by taking out the music because of licensing disagreements. Basically, the film and the music industry can't get along. They both act like selfish, immature little children. They can't act like grown-ups and say, look, this is in the best interest of both of us. Let's come to an agreement and sort it out. And so songs get ripped out of shows. And I don't like it. I understand it. I don't like it. However, in this case, I don't understand it. I think it was absolutely stupid. And not only that, but really can't be supported by the facts. Now, Judith reports in her book. Now, this is not from Judith. This is her reporting information she was given. The official excuse as to why When Irish Eyes Are Smiling was ripped out of the music box music. Supposedly due to licensing issues or royalty issues. I say bovine excrement because, well, first of all, it's an important piece of music for Steele.
Yeah. Oh, very.
Very. Yeah, it sets this relationship up with him, being Irish, and it's this thread that carries through. Well, here's the problem. Copyrights as they exist today are totally screwed up.
Oh, yes.
I mean, you can literally, in the United States, have a piece of music copyrighted for over 100 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nuts.
That is insane. That is not what copyrights were meant to do. They were not to lock up something forever. But thank you, Disney.
Yeah, it's always Disney, right?
Well,
like that
is.
mouse is pure evil.
Oh, yes. And Disney is the people to blame for this because they managed to get Sonny Bono, yes, that's Sonny Bono, to pass or to put forward a bill in Congress, which was then passed, which just totally changed the copyrights. Originally, the copyright was intended to give a creator the ability to seek, receive some compensation for their work. Creating is not easy. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of work. Just ask anybody who writes fan fiction. And if you want to do this as a profession, to make a living at it, you've got to invest a lot of time and effort and energy. And a lot of times you're doing that with no money up front.
Yeah.
And so the whole purpose of the copyright is to give that person who creates something a chance to recoup their investment in time and energy and effort. But it is also intended to be a limited copyright because without the arts, societies decay.
100%.
And if nobody's being encouraged to create art, then there's no art creation. But at the same time, society also benefits when that art is brought into the public domain. And so copyrights were intended to be limited in duration so that both halves of that equation are satisfied. The person doing the creation gets some benefit out of it because they control the rights to the music for a specific period of time. And then after that, the music falls, or music, film, books, whatever, falls into the public domain so that the public can use them. I mean, after all, think of all the Sherlock Holmes movies we could have had if the Sherlock Holmes estate hadn't tied up the character. I mean, it's still in copyright because even though some of the earlier works have fallen out of copyright, the characters are still in copyright because of later works. And Disney has done the same thing with so many things. Don't ever try to do a animated version of Sleeping Beauty. Disney will sue you.
Oh, yeah.
They don't own the story, but they will find some reason to sue you and prevent you from doing it because they've got a copyright on their version of it that they use to bully people. And their copyright on that goes till who knows when.
Yeah.
Because literally up to 120 years on a copyright. Now, When Irish Eyes Are Smiling was published and copyrighted in 1912. Now, at that time, a copyright was 28 years, which puts us through 1940. Then, in 1940, it was eligible for a single one-time renewal for an additional 28 years. That takes us through 1968.
Right.
As of the end of 1968, that song fell out of copyright. It fell into the public domain. Nobody needs any permission to use it. Nobody has to pay anybody to use it. You can do whatever you want, however you want, wherever you want with that song. End of discussion. No copyright, no royalties. Now, the exception might be if some country, we'll say Politzania, if you're a fan of a Canadian band, you'll know that. Anyway, let's say that their copyright does extend beyond what the U.S. copyright was for this song at that time. Well, so what? The DVD market, and keep in mind, these DVDs were released in 2006. So I doubt that there was anywhere in the world where the copyright was still enforced. But let's say Politzania did have a copyright on that still. You just don't release the DVDs to Politzania. I mean, the U.S. is the biggest market anyway. I'm sorry if that offends somebody, but that's the way it is.
No,
I
I 100% agree.
You make the decision based on the biggest market. And then you go to the copyright holders and say, look, in Politzania, we might sell 10,000 copies. So we'll pay you royalties based on that. Now, the copyright holder will probably say, well, no, because worldwide and all this other stuff, so we're going to hold you hostage so that you won't release it at all. Well, you tell them to go pound sand. You release it. You don't distribute it to Politzania until the copyright expires. Problem solved.
And with the way that things can be imported these days, like it would be one of those things where it would not be hard for anybody in that particular area to just simply order it from elsewhere and have it shipped.
Yeah.
So
even in 2006, I mean, there was Amazon, there was eBay. Worst case scenario, you buy a region-free Chinese pirated copy of it.
Our Blu-ray player is region-free and it plays DVDs because my husband's DVD collection was all British DVDs, right? So we deliberately made sure we actually hacked ours. There are ways you can hack your machines to play all regions, and we just did that, and so we can play any region of DVD that we have. So,
well, and I think region 2 is Europe. So let's say somebody in Politzania couldn't get a copy of it officially. They can get a hold of one of their Remington Steele friends in some other region 2 country and say, hey, you know, here's a PayPal payment. Send me a copy of the DVDs. Problem solved.
It was a kind Remington Steele fan that sent me a tape with episodes from season 1 when the TV station that was showing the reruns where I was watching them was only showing seasons 3 through 5 because they didn't something about rights to showing the whole show. So, yeah.
And, you know, the thing is, if the studios would do this, if they'd say, you know, go pound sand, we're going to release it everywhere we can that isn't a copyright violation. And you, in your piddly little country, Politzania, you don't get it until the copyright expires. Well, the rights holders in the music industry would set a precedent that basically says you can't bully the TV industry.
Yeah, that's true.
Because you know exactly what they were doing. They've got this one little corner of the world that might have had a copyright on it. And so they held the entire world hostage unless you were willing to either pay the royalty they demanded or go to the expense of replacing the music.
Yeah. And it doesn't, it's upsetting because, as you said, it's important. It's character building. It's not just any song. It matters. Like that particular one matters. Does it matter so much that Laura gets drunk and sings Satisfaction or not? Not really.
No, but it's fun.
It's fun. I agree. It's fun, but her character is not as important
defined by it.
Yeah, exactly. So
yes. So
I agree with what you say.
Rant over.
I have two little stories I wanted to add to that just because it made me think of these two things, and that's how my ADHD works.
Of course.
One is just...
And you got to say them when you think about them, other you forget them.
Yeah, or you'll forget them, yeah. But I think people will find this interesting because two are issues that deal with copyright in different... And I'm sorry, one is a Buffy story. But so essentially... I'll tell that one first so I can
get it out of the way. Get it out of the
way. During season 3 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the Columbine school shooting happened. And now, through just total coincidence, there had been an episode of Buffy that was set to air literally the day after the shooting, in which Buffy gains the power to read minds, and she reads the mind of a student that's threatening to kill everybody. Out of respect for the situation, they pulled that episode and basically said, we're not going to air it yet. I mean, they eventually did air it, but it was months and months later. They said, we're not going to air this episode yet. We're going to leave it. Right. So that was probably like 3/4 of the way through the season. The season progresses as normal. We get to the season finale. We get the first half of the season finale. Right. And then the second half gets pulled. Because in the second half of the third season finale, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen Buffy, she blows up her school. Now, she blows up her school to stop a giant demon snake from eating the entire school populace. So it's not really the same thing as a student threatening to kill everybody. But the network stepped in and said, yeah, I don't know if we want an episode airing where somebody blows up a school. And at this point, Joss, the showrunner, he felt that the context was different enough that wasn't really fair, especially since the first half of the season finale had already aired. Well, here's the thing. In Canada, we got those 2 episodes back to back. So the US had to wait a week, and we got them back to back, and that meant we had seen the episode even though they pulled it in the States. So... you'd have at this point, this is 1999, Canadian fans going, we've seen it. And, mailing tapes to fans in the US because they couldn't see it. And they didn't see it until I think the beginning of September or something like that. It took a while for that episode to finally make its way to the US. And when they interviewed Joss Whedon about it, he basically said, bootleg the puppy. Like he gave tacit permission for fans to send tapes because he thought that was a bit ridiculous. He obviously was completely on board with pulling the episode called Earshot, but the finale was a bit different. So there was that particular instance where fans kind of took to the piracy, the high seas, one would say, and kind of like bootlegged it old school with VHS tapes. But the other story that I thought of also had to do with VHS. I was very resistant to DVD when DVDs started coming out, mainly because it meant I'd have to replace my entire movie collection, and I was not a fan. Also, and I still think this, DVDs are much easier to break and scratch and ruin than tapes. And so my issue was always like, I don't care about the shiny extras. I want my VHS tapes. And I stood on my soapbox forever. And I was proven right. The movie Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves came out in 1991, something like that. They approached Bryan Adams to write the song, as you know, and he wrote Everything I Do It For You. Now, they shot a music video involving, that was montaging all the scenes from the film and making a proper music video out of it, which they played during the end credits of the film on the VHS.
Okay.
But not on the DVD. They did not buy the rights. That video disappeared, and you just got credits. And now it's been pulled from YouTube and Vimeo and any other source where you would watch a music video. That video does not exist unless you find a pirated copy. It's gone. And it just bothers me because like that was the memory that I had of that music video, like all the scenes from the film and how they were cut together. And it's, they one little, copyright, and it's gone. You can't get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's one of my big complaints about the TV and the music industry or the film and music industry not getting along, because it's almost like it's a setup. It's almost like, we'll let you have it for the broadcast and version, and we let you for the VHS version, but for the DVD, no, we're going to hold you hostage because we think it's so important to you and your fans of the show that you're going to pay whatever extortion fees that we want to demand. And then the studios, understandably, say, no, we're not. But again, they're both, the studio wants everything for nothing, and the music industry wants to give nothing and get everything.
Yeah.
So, there's no grown-ups in the room.
That's true.
None at all.
Okay.
Anyway. Oh, one other thing I want to mention.
Sure.
It came up this week. I was listening to some podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts about podcasting. Very meta.
Yeah, it's very breaking the fourth wall.
Yes. And there was a lot of discussion this week about some reports that came out about advertising in podcasts and how it is increasing dramatically.
Yeah.
And I want to say that we are proudly ad-free. So if somebody is listening to this and they're hearing advertisements in this podcast,
it
ain't us.
Nope.
Change where you're listening to the podcast, because if you're hearing ads, that is whatever platform you're listening through, whether it be Spotify or whatever, they are the ones adding the commercials and the ads, not us. So if you want some help finding a place to listen with no ads, just drop us a line and we'll get you a hand. So anyway, yes, probably ad-free since forever.
Unless it's my advertisements for Buffy, in which case, there's lots of those.
That's not advertisements. That's just
shameless
rabid
plugs.
Fandom out of control.
Run amok. I agree.
Yes. Where's amok? I don't know, but we ran there.
Yeah. Well, we're 16 minutes in. I'll get to the TV guide synopsis.
Sure.
Laura is summoned to Ireland to help an amnesiac Steele remember who he is, what brought him to Ireland, and why somebody wants to kill him. The only other thing I want to say before we get into this, we kind of talked about with Blue Blooded, because initially in the script for Blue Blooded, this episode was supposed to have aired prior to it.
Correct.
And I have to say that switching it around very much changes both episodes in different ways, because if this episode had aired before Blue Blooded, as I said when we recorded Blue Blooded, it would make more sense that Laura was more understanding of Steele going off with Daniel to England rather than, ripping his face off, because of what happens in this episode, how she finds out about his past and his family and whatever else, right? This episode, I kind of have, I'm questioning as I was watching through it, why she didn't rip his face off. Even though he had lost his memory, you would think she would come in guns hot because he's disappeared yet again and not told her, right? Like, even it's interesting that she doesn't even mention it. Like, obviously, she shows up and she's immediately told about his amnesia, but like,
she does mention in passing that the only thing she knows is that he left on Friday, left her a note that says he would be back on Monday.
Yeah, I know, but we don't get any. Yeah, we don't get any sense, because you would think if this had happened right after Blue Blooded Steele, and with Can still fresh in their minds, that she'd be furious, even though he doesn't remember. That she'd be pissed off, and that anger would come through somehow, and yet it doesn't seem to be anywhere in sight. So it's kind of interesting that they made that switch, and then, because it kind of screws up both episodes in a way.
Yeah.
So, I just
timeline, what's that? We don't care.
Yeah. Anyway, all right, let's get into it. So we open on a scene inside a home. It's filled to the brim with people. We've got an upbeat Irish fiddle music in the background. We can tell it's a dream or a flashback because we've got that blurry, hazy visual technique they sometimes use. And they used in that, I think it was the altered Steele. They use the same kind of thing where he's having the dreams of the different women trying to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got that hazy thing going on. We see a man lying dead in a coffin in the middle of the room. And, as the camera sort of pans around, it's clear that it's an Irish wake. We've got people dancing. A man who seems to recognize whoever is dreaming kind of smiles. And then we see the camera zoom in on a gold pocket watch. And it's at that point that Steele wakes up. So it's kind of an interesting beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who's ever been to an Irish wake or been around Irish people know that this is not totally inaccurate. Although what I will say is interesting is that, I've never been to Ireland. So for anybody who has been, I know we have at least one person that is in the Facebook group that is in Ireland. I don't know if they listen, but I do know that it's very uncommon in Scotland to see a corpse open casket.
Really?
Yeah, because when my grandparents passed away here, and I told my husband, like, there was a visitation and stuff, he was really surprised that we did open casket funerals and things like that. He had never seen anything be open casket. So it might be different in Ireland. I don't know.
Is it some sort of tradition based on ancient religious beliefs, or that's just cultural?
I'm assuming it's just cultural. That's my guess. I don't know for sure, but or it could just be that they set it up this way because they needed the shot in the episode.
Well, I was thinking more in the sense of
not seeing it. I don't know.
Scott.
Yeah.
And his comment about that's weird.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, because I'm not overly religious myself, and it's just always been the thing that you do. Unless, of course, that person died in a way that's so horrible you wouldn't want to see what's inside the casket.
Yeah. Where's the casket? Oh, it's that bucket over there.
Yeah, you don't want to look. But, I don't know. I'll have to ask him. I'll get back to you. So we switch back to Steele. He's on a floor, and he's coming to. The watch begins to play. I'm just going to say a melody.
Yeah, because that's basically all it is some little kid sat down on a little plunky thing. And,
I couldn't even like pick out what the tune was.
Yeah. It's just, I'm sure it's just some stock music they had in the library, or they paid somebody to come in and we just need something on a music box that sounds like music.
Yeah. Yeah. So it starts to play. He sits up, and beside him there appears to be a man who is bleeding and dead. And Steele immediately knows that's not good. Whereas in the other room, we've got this woman who's this actress is interesting. She's an interesting casting choice.
Yes.
Did you feel that way?
Oh yeah, and she. I had this later in my notes, but she very much comes across as the power behind somebody else. It's her. She talks about her husband, and he would never have tolerated that. But I got the feeling that her husband was just really kind of her puppet.
Yeah, I sort of felt that way too.
And whenever she said, "Well, my husband," it was really, no, I'm just using him as kind of the way to so A, he gets the blame.
Yeah.
And B, it looks good officially, but I'm just kind of like I said, behind the scenes, pulling all the strings. I am the puppet master.
She definitely goes out of her way to portray herself as a doddering old woman. In fact, I think she uses that exact phrase, but clearly is anything but.
It's meant to deceive and disarm.
Yeah, very much a sociopath. So I really, actually really like her. I know
you really like her. Of course you do.
I know I shouldn't because she's all evil and stuff, but like she's fun.
Yeah, she's fun in a pull the wings off of a fly sort of way.
Precisely. We find out later on her name is Mrs. Armadale, but at the moment they don't say her name.
Mm-hmm. The
servant, a man named Hilliard, tells her that they will have to replace Patty. She says they will, and hands him a hunting rifle, telling him it was Mr. Armadale's favorite. Now, it's interesting that he says we'll have to replace Patty, because Patty, it's both a pejorative term for an Irish person, like a Patty, or it's a nickname for somebody named Patrick. And we later find out that that man is Patrick O'Rourke.
Mhm.
So, but initially when I watched it, when he said, we'll have to replace Patty, I forgot, right? And I was like, is he meaning that as an insult or is that the guy's name? Never quite sure. So yeah, it's kind of a... so yeah, she hands him the hunting rifle, and then she claims that he used to love sneaking up on the little creatures and blowing their heads off. See this?
It's horrible person.
She has all the warmth of a snow cone, but I kind of love her. So she gives him the rifle and tells him to think of the intruder as a mallard whose time has come.
I guess however you want to do it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Willard doesn't really need any encouragement. He's perfectly happy to go do whatever it is she asks him to do. So,
if we can engage in a little role play in the process, so much the better.
Okay. So yeah, he takes the gun. He goes into the other room, but Steele is gone, leaving just the corpse. In the other room, we see Steele looking at a movie poster for A Day at the Races, starring the Marx Brothers. He looks over to see a photo of a horse race with the same caption, so pictures of the movie. And he's clearly in a movie theater. He backs up into a life-size sort of still of a man holding a gun, puts his own hands up, thinking it's real, and out of the corner of his eye, he sees it's just a cardboard cutout, and then he leaves. Outside the bijou, we can see it's day. Here's what kind of... I scratched my head a little bit at this. He walks into the street. He's almost hit by a car. I know he has a head injury, but he still understands what traffic is. So why does he continue to wander through the street? There's cars there.
Well, you're disoriented, and you know that it's a problem, but your thinking is confused, and you're trying to figure out how to get out of the situation, but your mind isn't operating quickly enough that you put two and two together and say, I need to walk across the street.
Maybe I shouldn't walk right in front of this car.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not a plan.
I guess in some ways, if you've ever seen anybody who's really intoxicated.
No, I've never seen anyone really intoxicated.
Well, okay. Just imagine that. I mean, it's kind of the same thing, because on one level, they know that being out in the street is not a good thing.
True.
And they may see that, there's lights. It's a car. But their thinking process, their ability to analyze a situation and come to a solution or a course of action out of that situation, that is all very, very slowed. And so, yeah, I mean, I can see how that would happen.
That's fair.
Especially with a good clonk on the head, as Mildred calls it.
I do love the head clonking, as Mildred calls it.
We'll get there in a minute.
Yeah. We see Willard leave the bijou, and he follows. Now, here's the other thing. He's holding a hunting rifle wrapped in cloth. Does he think
nobody
that's
will
fooling
notice
anyone? Right?
Yeah.
And given the Republic, so I did a little research, because I do know, in terms of Scotland and England, that, and we've talked a little bit about this before, firearms are all but unseen. You don't usually see firearms in the UK. Police don't carry them. Handguns are banned. The only time you'll see even hunting rifles is if you have a license to own one for hunting purposes, and even then they are heavily, heavily restricted in means of transportation and things like that. So, if he's walking down the street, and I didn't know if Ireland had a similar policy, because Republic of Ireland officially is separate from the UK, so they may be different. So I Googled it because I was curious, because this is the hardest gun to hide on the planet. We criticize Steele sticking his handgun down his pants, but at least that's hidden. Whereas you put your shirt over top, you won't see it. But you're carrying a firearm wrapped in a cloth. People are going to see that. So
yeah, they're going to be suspicious.
From what I saw here, they also have some of the strictest laws in the world, both with strict legislation governing licensing and fastidious application. And basically, it's similar to it's a legal license is required to own or possess a firearm in the Irish Republic. Failure to adhere to that may result blah, blah, blah. It also basically mandates that you have to, like if you're traveling, you have to keep it at a either firing range or somewhere that it's locked up. And if you're traveling, you have to have paperwork to prove that you're going where you're going. There is no right to own any firearms. Like it's very heavily restricted. So if he's walking down the street with a rifle in his hand covered in a piece of cloth, like I don't know who he's fooling, but if the police drive by, they're gonna.
Of course, this was in the 1980s, and what was the status of the Civil War? Is the only term I can think to call it there, because there's been a lot of, I'll say, combat between the various groups, Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, the Catholics and the Protestants. Although I think those terms are just probably handy labels, not necessarily reflective of anything. But
no, it's more to do with.
There's a lot of combat there, a lot of firearms, and a lot of that. So even though they might have been technically illegal, would it have been the sort of thing that even if it caught somebody's attention, that anybody would actually do anything about at that time? I don't know.
I'm going to say probably because, and we're talking Republic of Ireland, not Northern Ireland, two different situations. Right. But random little history lesson, you've got your uprising in 1916, and then you've got essentially the reason for the Civil War that took place is because there was a treaty that was put forward that would end the hostilities, and some were okay with it and they signed it, and others were very much not. This was in Northern Ireland, and so you had the Civil War, which resulted in we've got Republic, Northern Ireland, but it also resulted in like decades and decades worth of what you're referring to, the troubles in Northern Ireland, where they had police, and they were armed usually with machine guns and stuff like that at checkpoints where they would stop people and search them and like make sure that they were who they said they were and that they were going where they said they were going, especially if they were crossing a border into London or something like that. So it very much was something that was heavily policed because there was so much violence. They were trying to prevent people from setting off bombs or shootings and things like that. So this act was put into place in 1925. And basically, that would have been around the same time the Civil War ended, roughly. So yeah, you had to keep it in a safe location. Had to be like an authorized shooting range, which you had to be a member of. You must have attendance records. You had secure storage. There had to be a certificate. Like so it's just kind of odd to see him like wander. I mean, obviously it's a TV show and we're supposed to suspend disbelief, but the first thing I thought was like, who's he fooling? That thing is huge. Like,
yeah, really.
It's not like.
and on the subject that we've just been talking about, I have seen people, and I shake my head over it, go into Irish bars and order black and tan. You do not order a black and tan in an Irish bar. It's a half and half.
Yeah.
Black and tan will get you killed. Understandably.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand that reference, go look it up. It was not a good thing in the Irish history. So let's just leave it at that.
Well, similarly, don't go into a bar and order an Irish car bomb either, because also definitely not appropriate.
Yeah.
Also really gross.
But the thing is, with black and tan, a lot of people think that's the name of the drink, and I guess for a lot of people it is, but it has a very it was a very, very bad association for the Irish.
For sure. Yeah.
So half and half.
All right, back to now we've
Guinness and
Irish history and your drink order in a bar. We see Steele wander into a shipyard, and
we're not educational at all.
You're right. And he tells the man on the boat that he's looking for Orson Welles. The man is obviously confused, and Steele wonders if it's Joseph Cotton. We see Willard coming up behind him with the gun. Steele then tells him he's looking for Xanadu. Willard sees him, pulls the cloth away in broad daylight, because apparently that's fine, positioning the gun, about to shoot Steele. Unfortunately for Willard, and fortunately for Steele, he leans too far on the rope and he falls into the water, and Willard makes a run for it. So probably the only good thing to come out of falling off of a pier.
Yeah. being almost drunk in a sense and falling off of a pier. Yes.
Right? So yeah, we see a plane landing in the next scene. Laura and Mildred getting out of the airport. Thankfully, Mildred does not make a fuss about her.
That is my notes.
As far as we know. Is that in your notes?
Yes.
That's funny. But they've done a lot of traveling these last 2 episodes, so maybe she's just getting used to it.
Yeah. Or maybe it was just, she just had an issue with it over there in...
Could be. In Malta, yeah.
In Malta, yes.
So they pull up to an old building in a rented car and they get out. And as they do, Mildred comments that
Why is it that, like Mildred, why is it that Irish hospitals look different from everybody else's hospitals?
I don't know that they necessarily do. I mean, I've been inside some UK hospitals before. Unfortunately, with my migraines, I sort of do the hospital tour. And I've been inside the Royal Infirmary of Glasgow. And my guess would be this is maybe a private hospital, but and or that it's like a specialized hospital as opposed to like your typical. Either that or it's just the only building they could find to shoot in. It's probably
that looked vaguely Irish.
That looked vaguely Irish, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I've never. Again, that could be something that people could tell us if they know, because, yeah, because Mildred says it doesn't look or feel like a hospital, and Laura just says, well, it's an Irish hospital, as if that explains everything. But
exactly.
Kind of doesn't.
There you go.
Like, I've been inside a few, and they don't all look like that. Not in Ireland, obviously, but in Scotland, so... And my husband jokingly says, and I apologize to any Irish people that are listening, that Ireland is just Scotland, but greener. So,
Oh, I'm not getting in the middle of that one.
There's a whole rivalry there. So, and every time I've said I really want to go to Ireland, he's like, yeah, but it's just like Scotland. I'm like, but it's not. It's really not. So, anyway.
I like their hats.
Yeah. Inside, a man comes into the waiting room, introduces himself as Dr. Tulliver. He thanks them for coming, and Laura says that his cable sounded so urgent. He tells her that when he sent it, he, meaning Mr. Steele, was unconscious, and tells her that he's awake now, but there are complications. They get up to follow him. He tells Mildred to stay behind, adding that given his condition, one face is enough right now. But he says it in a way that's really odd. He says something like, one face is all he could tolerate. Like... That doesn't really sound complimentary to Mildred. It's basically like your face might send him into shock,
I guess what he's trying to say is that he can't handle a lot of new information at the moment.
Yeah.
And it just confuses him. But yeah, he could have said it a little bit better.
Yeah, you said it better just now than the doctor does. He's just like, yeah, your face might be too much for him. It's like, ouch. So yeah, that's kind of funny. So he tells Laura that his cable might have sounded melodramatic, but all he had on him was her name and address and no ID of any kind. Laura points out that Dr. Tulliver still hasn't told her what's wrong with him. And here's where I also question his medical credentials, because he just opens the door and says, see for yourself. Maybe prep her a little bit on this.
His bedside manner sucks. Okay, yeah. Let's just say it. Let's just flat out. He's not good with people. He's a doctor because he doesn't like to deal with people.
Yeah, it was one of those things where I'm just like, well, maybe at least tell her what's going on so that she knows how to respond, because she gets put on the spot very much in front of the doctor here, because she doesn't know how to answer Mr. So just so you know, he has amnesia. He doesn't know who he is. At least tell her that much.
Yeah.
But no. He just opens the door. She goes inside this room, which is basically kind of looks like a living room. It's got a fireplace, some chairs, a coffee table. We see Steele standing by a window. I'm wondering, he fell into the water, okay? I can't imagine he had an extra suit in his pocket. So how does that suit look so good?
It's drip dry.
Yeah. It makes me think of probably you never saw the show because it's Canadian, but maybe you did. Did you ever watch Due South?
No, I've heard about it, but I've not seen it.
Okay, so the plot of the show is that Paul Gross plays a Canadian Mountie who goes to Chicago, which is basically Toronto pretending to be Chicago.
Of course.
on the trail of his father's killer, and then he ends up sticking around as a liaison and working with the Chicago cops. And it's a very fish out of water comedy where he's all Canadian, and they obviously exaggerate his Canadianness for comic effect.
Right.
And they do so in a bunch of different ways, one of which is that he's always clean. No matter what the situation is, his uniform is always immaculate. Like there's never a speck of dust on it. And we just watched the finale, and there's a bit where they like fall in the snow, and they fall out of a plane and they land in the snow and they stand up, and his partner Ray is like all covered in snow and looks ridiculous, and Fraser has like no snow on him. He's just like perfectly immaculate. All I can think of is that this is the same thing. Like somehow water just slides off him, and it doesn't, because he's not even wrinkled. He looks fantastic. So yeah, that's gotta be
Mr. Steele never shows up wrinkled. So
yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, that's right. Remington Steele doesn't show up wrinkled, so he must get his clothes from the same place that Benton Fraser does. So yeah, he's standing there looking out the window, and he turns around as Laura calls him Mr. Steele. He doesn't respond to the name, instead asking if they've met. The doctor tells him that this is Laura Holt. He looks confused for a moment, then rattles off a movie reference. Waspy's Little Clifton Webb, adding that he's cured and remembers who he is now. The doctor says, "You do?" And he says, "Yeah, I'm Otto Preminger." There are so many movie references. This is probably the most movie reference heavy episode of the series, I think.
Yeah. By my count, let's see, not including these types of references like Otto Preminger and Orson Welles and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 movies.
Jeez,
referenced.
wow, yeah, that's yeah. There's so many in this. It's quite impressive, actually. Laura asks what's going on. The doctor then tells her that he has amnesia. She echoes that. She says amnesia, and then we see Willard, who is on the phone with Mrs. Armadale, saying amnesia. So it's kind of like one of those little cuts. And Willard tells Mrs. Armadale that he can't remember a thing, which is a nice piece of luck for them. She pretends to be sympathetic and then tells Willard that memories are like unwanted relatives. They have a habit of turning up at the most inopportune times.
Yes.
Willard assures her that he's still a dead duck and hangs up. And then back in the hospital, the doctor is asking if she knows who he is. And this is where obviously Laura's in a little bit of trouble here, because she says she does, and that they've worked together for 3 years, adding that she is an associate of the Remington Steele Detective Agency. So she's dancing around his identity very cleverly here. He says, "Thank heavens." The doctor asks if he remembers, and he says no, but a detective agency sounds exciting and glamorous. He might have been an accountant. Which, on behalf of my husband, hey, he's not an accountant, but he works in the accounts department and does mathy things. So,
Well, my question is, the doctor acts like he's never heard of Remington Steele. And I will grant that he probably would not recognize him if he saw him. Because,
right.
Steele is based in Los Angeles and they're in Ireland. So it's entirely possible he's never seen a photograph or anything of it. But to have never even heard of him, given some of the high-profile cases that they've been involved with, is that really reasonable?
I think it would be, just because unless you're, I don't know, not everybody pays attention to the news. Some people like deliberately just sort of avoid that kind of thing, and there's no internet. So I always, and I only say that because like my husband and I tease him because he's only 4 years older than me, but I call him an old man all the time because he grew up with only there were only 4 channels in the UK when he grew up. Right. And they didn't get a McDonald's till like 1987 and just stuff like that. Right. So I always tease him about how like he grew up in the dark ages, but I'm always mentioning pieces of pop culture or things that I assume people would know about, like news stories and whatnot, and that he's never heard of because of the cultural divide. So I definitely think, as even with like US culture, like there's so many things that I will mention because we get all your news and all your entertainment because we're so close, but my husband has has never heard of it or never seen it or
Okay.
So I definitely think it's possible, especially in like a self-contained place like Ireland where I don't know.
Okay. All right.
But the doctor asks if he is Remington Steele, adding that it's important he know his real name as his memory might come flooding back. And Laura hedges her answer, saying that that is the name of the agency, and as far as the public at large is concerned, he does head the agency. That sounds a little suspicious, doesn't it? To say right in front of the doctor?
And then the doctor says, so he is Remington Steele, and Laura says, well, that's what we call him. And I've got exactly what you said in my notes. The doctor doesn't react or question in any way.
Yeah.
He's obviously evasive, and you'll need to explain that answer.
Yeah, she sounds like a child trying to get around asking for permission for something, right? Like from a parent. Like it just
yeah.
You didn't tell me not to drink the chocolate milk.
That's right.
You didn't explicitly say I couldn't, so
yeah.
Yeah, it does.
You said I couldn't have that cookie, but I had that cookie over there.
The other cookie, yeah. And it yeah. So she's not doing a very good job here of
No.
Yeah. So she says that's what we call him, as you said, and then he looks at Steele, who says it doesn't seem to fit, and the doctor asks about essential background information. Laura tells him that 2 weeks ago they completed the Parkinson case about a dog in Malibu Beach, so obviously some time has passed between Blue Blooded and this episode. The doctor tells her that he needs to go further back than that and give information on his hometown or relatives. She says there are gaps. I gotta love that even without his memory, he's still kind of a jerk. Sometimes, like, because he jumps right in here and he says, of course, she's merely an employee and can't be expected to remember every intimate detail about the boss. This is where Laura, annoyed, asks, are you sure he's lost his memory?
That's one of those things where, on the one hand, Laura, there'd be a part of her that says, I'm going to get him, I'm going to get him, I'm going to get him. And then there's the other part that says, he just doesn't know what he's saying.
Yeah, exactly.
So she's got to be conflicted about his attitude and his responses and all this, because she hates what he's saying, but she understands it.
Also shows that he is who he is. It's not an artifice. I like that. So then the doctor, his beeper goes off and he excuses himself, saying that they should keep talking. Anything that can jog his memory might help. So he leaves. Steele tells her that he thinks his being a detective feels right because somewhere in the back of his mind there's a mystery that needs solving and danger. Laura waits to hear more, and he says that he thinks that she lied to him. He says that he doesn't have to know who... And this part, I gotta say, comes off creepy to me, because it might just be me, but he says that he doesn't have to know who he is to know what he feels or what kind of woman he is attracted to. And he says
she's not blonde.
Well, first of all, yeah. But he asks her again how long they've worked together for 3 years. She says yes. And he asks how close. She says very close. And then he says, but there are gaps. And she, of course, throws it back at him like, well, after all, you are merely the employee or employer and I'm merely the employee. But
right.
He's hitting on her and saying, I don't need my memory to know who I'm attracted to. But if in his mind what she's told him is true, that he's the boss and she's, quote, merely an employee, then he's totally cool with sleeping with a subordinate? Ugh. And use, I don't know, I just, it comes off icky. Like,
well,
I realize that people do get into relationships with their boss, but from a perspective of like, yeah.
Well, there's two things about conditions like amnesia. Conditions like amnesia can, I think, can do one of two things. They can either expose underlying elements of one's personality that they normally might keep hidden, or it can change their personality to something that they aren't. I mean, we've
right.
all heard and read the stories about people who wake up from a coma and they're literally in their mind a different person than they were when they went into the coma, or they speak in different language.
I was just gonna say speaking different languages and stuff like that, which is crazy.
Yeah. And so I can see where what he is portraying here could be just a totally different character than who he actually is, or it could be some element of his personality that he normally just keeps under control. And in this case, the normal controls that would be there to keep that in check are not in play. And so it's coming to the fore, which isn't necessarily that's not necessarily intended to sound creepy in the sense that, you know, a lot of people have these aspects to their personalities. They're things that they keep under control, but they're the secret impulses that we have, just sure. in the moment about this, that, or the other thing. And so, yeah. Anyway.
No, I agree with you on that. I guess the other question I have with this is, once the doctor's out of the room, why maintain the fiction? Why? I know she does eventually tell him when they get back to the hotel, but why not tell him here?
Well, because maybe he might blurt it out and that would create a totally different problem.
True. But that's
Or he might not believe her and start reacting negatively toward her because, well, obviously she's lying about this. So why would she be lying about something like this? This can't be good for me. So, I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's the next bit that rubs me the wrong way, because he moves closer to her and tells her that he can't believe they worked together for 3 years and haven't. And he trails off and essentially insinuates that he's surprised to have worked with her for 3 years without them sleeping together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, to me, I don't know, that makes my skin crawl a little bit, because it's basically him saying, like, I can't believe I've worked next to an attractive woman for 3 years and we haven't slept together. Like,
yeah.
That's the obvious conclusion here.
And of course, there's also the ego part of that, where it's basically, you've been working next to me for 3 years exactly. And you haven't jumped my bones because look at me. I mean, I'm so jumpable.
I mean, his suit does look perfect after a swim in the drink, but still. Yeah, so I don't know. I was like, ugh, I don't like that. Like, I don't think there's a problem with him asking how close they are, or admitting that he has, that he's attracted to her, that there's something that he feels that he thinks might be more to their relationship. But I think maybe it's just a line about, well, are you telling me we've worked together for 3 years and we haven't, like, as if I'm the kind of guy that would never work with a woman I was attracted to and not sleep with her.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Sure. How nuts.
Yeah. So he asks her to help him jog his memory, and then he kisses her. She allows the jog, but when he breaks away, he says he thinks he remembers. He kisses her again. She asks if he remembers, and he says, how could I forget such a precious memory? He tells her that he was lying on the floor. She was lying nearby, dead, shot. Except it wasn't her. It was Orson Welles or Joseph Cotton. And then there's danger. Deadly danger. Not really what Laura wanted to hear, I'm sure, but obviously some stuff is coming to the forefront.
Yeah.
Not quite as good as a good head clonking, but it does seem whenever they kiss, he remembers something. And doesn't get shot at, actually. Because outside...
Since you brought it up, can I mention that about the head clonking?
Sure.
I did look that up because I've heard that.
Oh, good. I'm glad someone did.
I'm sure you've heard in the past that, if you get hit on the head, another head clonk, just like Mildred says, it brings it back. No, it doesn't.
I didn't think so.
From what I can tell, depending on the nature of the amnesia, if it's due to a physical shock or physical damage that has caused some, say, swelling in the brain area, and that is the cause of the amnesia, then as the swelling goes down, the memory comes back.
Makes
because
sense.
the brain is returning back to its normal size, normal operation, that sort of thing. And so the the head clonking could seem to bring it back coincidentally, but no.
It's a convenient storytelling device because we need his memory to come back, and we need it to come back at the right time. So of course, clonk, everything's back. But
that's right.
The amount of times that poor man has been hit on the head, I'm surprised he didn't have brain damage before, because this is one
his
of
insurance
many
company requires him to wear a helmet at all times.
This is one of many clonks on that. This is one clonk too far, I guess. The whole point of this episode. So outside, we see Willard coming in with a cup of medicine, or what is supposed to be medicine. Laura says she's going to go get Mildred. I do like this bit. He asks who Mildred is, and Laura tells him that she's the other woman in his life.
Oh, that's cruel.
He's surprised, asking if she minds, and Laura says, no, we have an arrangement. We share you. She leaves the room, and Steele is shocked, saying, if only I could remember what a good time I've been having. Which, to be fair, probably not a good thing to do with someone who's got brain damage.
Mm-hmm.
You probably don't want to mess with their equilibrium like that, but you kind of have to forgive her a little bit after his comments about how she's merely the employee.
Right. But yeah, she's enjoying it just a little bit. Yeah.
A little too much, yeah. And it seems like there's a lot of, they tend to play this joke a lot, right? Because Steal Away With Me, we've got Mildred pretending to be his wife, and there's been a couple of occasions where they've done that, or she's been mother. Yeah. So Laura exits the room. She bumps into Willard. She excuses herself, but she does notice that his hands are dirty. She goes and tells Mildred what's going on, and Mildred thinks he's lost his marbles. She says not his marbles, his memory. We switch back to Willard, trying to give Steele his medicine. He asks if he knows him from somewhere, and Willard says he was the one who brought him his medicine the previous night. Then we go back to Laura. Mildred says she's seen this movie she's seen this in movies. She tells Laura a good clonk on the head usually brings it back. Laura is rightfully horrified, saying that head clonking is not a medically recognized treatment. She insists that this is a hospital, and then realizes that Willard had dirty fingernails. I don't know. I know what you just said, that you looked it up and it doesn't work, but with all the clonks on the head he's received, I'd be inclined to give it a go, right?
I mean, one more can't hurt, right?
What's one more concussion? Exactly. So inside, we've got Willard telling Steele best to down it in one go. He's about to, and Laura runs in, knocks it out of his hands. Willard shoves her into his lap and runs away. Steele asks her if she's trying to make a point or just naturally clumsy, and then they look down, and the medicine is burning through the carpet. Why didn't it burn through the cup?
Well, it's a glass shot glass, if I remember correctly.
It looked
Hang
plastic
on,
to me.
Pull up the video here. Come on, video.
Was it glass? Maybe I'm wrong. It looked
yeah,
plastic to me.
It looks like it's glass, and glass is resistant to a lot of things that will damage other things. So, acids are kept in glass bottles because they're impervious to the action of the acids.
Maybe it was because I thought it was plastic.
Yeah, and it's hard to tell, but I would say, given that time period, it might more likely be glass. But yeah, in a hospital, you would, at least these days, you would generally have plastic because it's you don't have to pay to sanitize it. It's use once and throw it away because it's so environmentally friendly to throw plastic away. It's like in California, we are going to have paper straws because it's so environmentally friendly that we wrap in plastic.
And what kills me about that is because I'm all for getting rid of needless plastic. Those paper straws fall apart. When you put them in water, they dissolve. There is biodegradable plastic that does exist. It's more expensive, so companies don't want to use it. So they it's funny
because first of all, I remember when I was younger getting paper straws that didn't fall apart that quickly.
Yeah.
They lasted for a while. And second of all, I remember straw dispensers. You may not remember them, but they were a metal thing that looked kind of like a toaster.
No. Yeah, I remember
and
those.
And they had the little two things that come up and you push it and a paper straw comes out. Why can't we go back to that?
That's a good question.
Anyway, yes, enough of my... Okay, I'm sorry. Mr. Grumpy, leave, please. Thank you. Goodbye.
No, I'm with you on that. I do remember those. Actually, some of our movie theaters still have them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah.
They're very economical. They're environmentally friendly. And, they're just not yuppie enough. Or Gen Z or Gen X or Gen whatever.
Once again, my generation gets skipped over.
I don't even know all those things at all, so I don't care.
I'm
Anyway.
a Zennial, or an elderly millennial. I don't love the term elderly millennial, so I'm sticking with Zennial. But
Okay, well, back to the episode.
So Laura, basically, they see the burning carpet, and she basically says, "Yeah, we got to get out of here." So they leave. He asks where they're taking him. Laura says she doesn't know, but somewhere safe to figure things out. She introduces Mildred as the other woman and their secretary. So he greets Mildred rather formally, and Mildred attempts to hit him over the head with her purse.
She's bound and determined to do it.
She really is. I do love this. So she stops her just in time as he gets in the car, and she continues to insist it always works in the movies. And Steele has a feeling he likes the movies, asking if Laura does too. So I do like that. As they drive away, Willard, still lurking, gets into a car and follows them. So we get a scene change. They enter a small room in what I assume is a B&B.
Mm-hmm.
Mildred declares it the Pits, which I don't know about you, but that seems it's a nice room. I don't.
That's what I have in my notes. I said, seriously, it looks like a nice room.
Yeah. I mean, B&Bs are typically small, and I don't know where they're going to sleep because there's only 2 beds. So.
Well. They'll figure out the sleeping arrangements. I'm sure Mr. Steele has a plan for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it looks like a nice room. I guess the only thing that, Mildred might be thinking of is that she is after Cannes and Malta and some of the nice places that they've been, this might seem to her a come down. But, especially since the bathroom is down at the end of the hall and everybody shares it. But
that's a B&B. Like, that's how B&Bs work, right? I mean.
I don't know. I've never done a B&B thing. I guess some of them do, some of them may not. But, still, I think it's a nice looking room.
Yeah. No,
I wouldn't complain about it.
And this isn't just a Europe thing. This is B&B thing. This is because, obviously with a hotel room, you have your own bathroom, but a B&B, you can get some rooms that have their own private bathroom. You're usually paying more for those. But most of the time, if you're staying in a bed and breakfast, it's a house, right? Somebody has purchased a house that they have then turned into a bed and breakfast wherein you're sharing a room, usually with, 2 or 3 other guests. It's not typically a lot, but yeah, you're sharing a bathroom. But you usually get breakfast is provided, hence the B&B thing. Scott and I have stayed in quite a few of them, both in the UK and in Canada, and that's just how they are. They're usually cheaper than hotels, and they're. I like them. I think they're kind of cozy, but yeah, Mildred's not a fan. So
apparently not.
Laura insists it gets them off the streets. Mildred takes her hairdryer to go clean up. Steele asks Laura who they are, and Laura says that's what they have to find out. She asks him what he was doing in Ireland, and he is surprised that she doesn't know. She tells him all she knows was that she got to the office on Friday and there was a note saying he was taking a long weekend and would be back on Monday. He reasons that he obviously had to dash away on an important case, but she insists that he doesn't work that way alone without her.
Can I?
Yep.
Can I get myself in trouble here?
Okay, go for it.
In this scene, and I think one other, Laura takes her jacket off. Get rid of the jacket. That's all I'll say. Just get rid of the jacket.
You don't like the jacket?
No, I like the rest of it.
Oh, wow. Okay, so this is aside from the baseball pants, this is a pro. Eric is pro this outfit. So
sweaters and skirts. And that's
so
all
you
I'll
probably
say.
like the sweater at the end too, right? The patchy one.
Sweaters and skirts. Sweaters and skirts. That's all I'll say.
That's funny. Okay, I'm with you on that. I actually think all of her outfits in this episode, I think, look fantastic on her. And this is part of they dress to match wherever they are, which I do find kind of funny that they have these words like, okay, we're going out to the Old West or an old Westy town, break out the cowboy hats and all the denim, and now we're going to Ireland. I've got, cozy Irish skirts and
I should have worn my hat. Should have worn my hat.
Do you have like an Irish cap?
Yeah, a vintage style cap, patch,
nice.
Patchwork.
Nice.
Yeah, bought it from Hannah Hats out of Donegal.
Cool.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, I do like Irish wool
Mhm.
and like Irish wool sweaters and stuff like that. Horrifically expensive, but really, really warm and really nice. Like they make really nice stuff. So yeah, I am a fan of her wardrobe throughout this entire episode.
I don't do the travel thing, but Ireland is one place that I would, if I could go there by boat, I would love to visit Ireland. Yeah.
I mean, you can. It'll take you a while.
Yeah. Well, you got to be able to pay the bills back home while you're doing it, and so there's a problem. So anyway.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. So she says that he doesn't work alone without her. He's surprised that as the head of the agency, he doesn't pursue his own cases. She sighs. This is where I think she realizes that she can't get around telling him. And he knows that she's hiding something from him, especially after all the gibberish about not knowing about his past. So he begs her to tell him everything and not hold back. He gets very melodramatic. Don't tell me everything. Don't hold back. She grabs his shoulders and tells him that he is not Mr. Steele and that he was invented. And understandably, he looks very confused because that's a weird way to tell somebody.
You don't exist.
Yeah, you're not real. You're a figment of my imagination.
All of this is a hallucination I'm having.
You are getting sleepy. Also, I would like to know, because he does wear a different outfit at the end of the episode, I would like to know where his luggage is. Because he woke up in that movie theater, then he went to the hospital.
He must have found it at some point.
Or he bought himself a new outfit, I guess. But we'll get to that outfit because I'm not a fan. Anyway, outside, we've got Willard lurking around. And inside, Steele is shocked to hear that he's a figment of her imagination. She tries to explain her logic behind creating him. And he kind of says, yeah, I know all that. But if I'm not Remington Steele, then who the devil am I? She tells him that
we don't know.
He's always been evasive about his past. And he says, well, I must have given you some clue. And so then she kind of goes through all of the stuff that we as an audience know about him so far, that he prospected for gold in the Yucatan, he boxed his way across South America, stole the 5 nudes of Cairo, and that when she met him, he had 5 different passports, each with the name of a character Humphrey Bogart played in the movies. So he's pretty impressed by this.
And he's astounded. Good Lord, what an extraordinary life for someone so young.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I would probably think the same thing if it were me. I'd be like, wow, that's pretty badass. I'm impressed by myself. Go me. So Laura says, well, it's all fascinating. It doesn't tell them who he is. And he muses that he thinks his identity is somehow tied up in all of this. She's frustrated, saying if he could only tell her what he had been doing the whole time. He stands up excitedly as if he remembers something and describes a bar. I love this. This whole, there's a piano played by a black man, another man nearby, rugged, careworn face. And Laura's sitting there and she's like hanging on his every word, sure that this is a lead, right? A woman comes in. She's blonde, beautiful, very sad. The rugged man looks at her and recognizes her. And then he says, of all the gin joints and all the towns in all the world.
And then what does he do? That song was published and copyrighted in 1931. They could use that one, but they couldn't use When Irish Eyes Are Smiling. I'm sorry, Mr. Grumpy.
Here we go again.
I'm sorry.
I mean, maybe it's because and again, I'm not excusing they're not using When Irish Eyes Are Smiling, but in terms of the copyright for this one, maybe it's because he hums so little of it and does it in such a way. I don't know.
I didn't time it, but I'm going to say that When Irish Eyes Are Smiling probably didn't play much longer, if any longer, than it took him to hum this.
Fair enough. Yeah, true. So. Probably. There's something to time, everybody listening. But Laura's face falls when he gets to this point. She says, that isn't it. Steele says, no, I'm sure the tune is right. And Laura insists, you've just described a scene. You don't have to be a movie buff to know the way you've just described is the scene from Casablanca. So, he sits down disappointed. And here's where I'm going to call bull. Mildred re-enters the room, having just showered and extremely annoyed that her hairdryer doesn't work. Of course it doesn't work. You've got the wrong plug.
Well.
But you literally just went to England. How do you not know that?
Well, maybe she didn't wash her hair while she was in England.
Maybe. It just seems funny that that literally they would do these episodes back to back, where you do need different plugs for appliances over there, and it's easy enough to buy adapters.
Yeah, well, and I can understand there are people who would not realize that not only are the plugs physically different, but they're different voltages and such.
Yes.
So there's people that wouldn't necessarily understand that. But you're right. I mean, she was just in England not too long ago.
England.
Yeah.
You would have seen. I could see it. I could buy it if they hadn't just been in England.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I guess it was just another way of, I know the Irish, but it's not just the Irish. It's the whole of the United Kingdom.
Yes.
And the Republic of Ireland.
And probably parts of Europe too. So
yeah, definitely. I'm pretty sure. I haven't been to any of mainland Europe, but I'm fairly certain that they have different voltages and plugs there too. So
yeah,
because when I buy the voltage adapter, it lists the countries that it'll work in, right? So yeah.
Is Politsania one? Oh,
not that I saw.
Okay.
Yeah, but it just seems like
I wonder how many people are going to catch that reference.
It just seems like a weird way to roll their eyes at the Irish, which doesn't make any sense because it would be the exact same in England or anywhere else
exactly.
in that particular area of the world. So yeah, she goes. Laura insists she. Sorry. Where am I? Oh yeah, right. Laura says, "No, we're in an emergency situation," with Steele's memory. And Mildred reminds her that she's on the side of head clonkers.
Yes.
To which Laura insists she would never do that unless all else had failed. It's then she notices a ticket stub on his shoe. She tells him not to move. How did that survive the splash in the water? And still be readable?
Good question. Yeah. Well, it would probably have washed off. Never mind be readable. It just wouldn't be there.
Yeah, I know. So she tells him not to move. Pulls it off. Reading Bijou Theater. He's excited to find a clue, and they both rush off. Not to mention the fact that it could be something he stepped on after whatever it was he was doing.
That's true too, yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean it's a clue, but I guess they needed something. They both rush off. Mildred says, "What about me?" And Laura tells her to stick her head out the window, and the breeze will try it. Like she's a dog.
Yeah.
Stick your head out the window. So yeah. They leave Mildred behind. They approach the Bijou, and Steele calls it a flea pit, saying that's what they called it in his youth. This is consistent with the stuff that I've read up on amnesia when we talked about amnesia before, that you can sometimes remember stuff from before, maybe not concretely, but obviously he remembers enough to know that would be an expression that he used in his youth, but not necessarily indicating that he remembers anything about his youth. But I just thought it was an interesting detail to put in there.
Things I've heard about conditions like amnesia is that it isn't necessarily, I mean, it can be all or nothing, but
right.
It's very often chunks.
Yeah.
So this period of time, maybe immediately before and for a month or 2 or 6 months, whatever, beforehand, you can't remember. And I guess it's unpredictable as to what you will and won't remember and what sort of duration of that gap is. I guess it's probably a little bit like medications,
that makes sense.
When I was, when I had my little industrial accident, I don't remember a whole lot of it. I get bits and pieces that I think I remember, but most of it I don't remember because the medication wiped out my memory. So, I guess amnesia is like that in some respects. You get little bits and pieces maybe in the middle of this gap, but there's this huge gap. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. So we've got them entering the Bijou. Willard close behind. Inside, they see that same poster for a day at the races, as well as the cardboard cutout that Steele backed into. Meanwhile, Willard has called Mrs. Armadale to tell her that Steele is a private detective. He describes Laura as an assistant, obviously, and Mrs. Armadale laments that her dear departed husband isn't there to counsel her. Yeah, okay.
Yes, dear. Whatever you say, dear.
I'm going to say I don't think she ever needed dear departed hubby for anything. But
milk toast.
Yeah. In fact, she probably killed him. Let's be clear here.
You're probably right. She
probably killed him. Willard tries to offer advice, but she tells him that she doesn't want it, as he is a servant and nothing more. Yeah.
From if mystery books and other books are to be believed, and even movies, the servants actually know more about what's going on than the people in charge.
Yeah. And not only that, but like the man's doing her wet work for him. At least she could
pretend.
Pretend
at
to
least
care.
Pretend. Yes.
So yeah, she tells him to find out who hired Steele and how much he knows. Willard says, and she says, "We'll kill them. Kill them all."
Kill them all.
And then goes back to her needlepoint.
Yes.
And I love this because it reminds me of a really ridiculously stupid movie that you've probably never seen because it was so goofy, but a movie from 93 called Surf Ninjas.
Never saw it. Never heard of it, actually.
Doesn't surprise me. It wasn't exactly a blockbuster, but it starred Ernie Reyes and Ernie Reyes Jr., as well as Leslie Nielsen as a villain. And essentially and Rob Schneider's in it too, and like Tone Loc. It had a bunch of it was a weird cast. But essentially the plot for the film is that Ernie Reyes Jr.'s character and his younger brother were adopted. They're Asian, they're Filipino actors. And they find out that they are secretly crown princes of this really unknown island nation. They were stolen away as babies, and their birthright is coming. There's some sort of prophecy, and that the evil Colonel Chi is coming after them to kill them. Leslie Nielsen plays the evil Colonel, and half his face got squished at the beginning of the movie, so he's got a big old helmet thing on. But when you see his evil lair, there's people in chains and people in cages, and they're crying for help, and there's a phone ringing, and he has to run all the way across what looks like a dungeon with this marsh, and all the way up these stairs until he's huffing, he's out of breath. He picks up the phone, he's like, "Yes, what is it? Kill them. Kill them. Yeah, kill them. Hold on, I've got call waiting." He presses the button. "Kill them. Kill them. Kill them." And then he hangs. It's really silly, but this reminded me, kill them. Kill them all.
Talking about Leslie Nielsen, there's so many people that probably don't even realize that for decades he was a serious actor.
Yeah.
He did not do comedy. And it was Airplane, I think it was, where he really made his name in comedy. And worse, better, more interesting is the fact that he made his name in comedy playing it totally straight.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the most ridiculous thing, but he's playing it like it's the most serious thing in the world.
And he's also in Due South. He plays a character named a Mountie named Buck Frobisher, and there's I'm Buck Frobisher, you little pissant. I've been solving crimes since you were pooping in your diapers. But he's very funny. It's that what you said, very serious. He plays it 100%. Mm-hmm. So yeah, this just reminded me of that, even though it's a really silly connection to make, but it's kind of a goofy movie. Kill them all. And then the fact that she goes back to her needlepoint, I just love that. So
now stop interrupting me while I'm busy doing the important things.
I'm doing cross stitch. Yeah, so Steele and Laura go into the room that he woke up in. There's a stain on the floor. Steele wonders if it looks like blood. To the left is a Casablanca poster, which he shows Laura, saying that proves he didn't imagine it. He moves the poster, and behind it, the dead man from earlier falls down to the ground. Behind him, they can hear a noise, and they turn around to see two police officers, or what they think are police officers. Mm-hmm. One says that the inspector said they would the inspector said they would come back to dispose of the body, and Laura says, "Surely you don't think we did this?" He insists they're private investigators, and it's funny how they're both trying to explain themselves, but it's so ridiculous. The clue on the shoe, they get the cuffs. Well, and he hums it again here. So yeah, you're right. Yeah, I know. So they cuff them. They take them away, and they yank them out of the theater. Steele still insisting they're making a big mistake, that when the inspector finds out who he is, perhaps he would be kind enough to tell him.
Yeah.
I do like that.
Okay, I've got a two-part issue here.
Okay.
A little bit before this exact moment and a little bit after this exact moment. Okay, so they're in the room with the dead body, and these two guys come in, apparently police officers, and they're going to walk them out of the room and get them into a car and take them down to the station, and they're going to just leave a dead body lying there without any kind of police oversight to secure the body and secure the scene further. Didn't Laura think anything about that?
Maybe she just went, it's the Irish. Maybe that was the hand wave that she's been doing this whole time.
And then they start driving out of town, and they've left town, and the town is behind them, and there's no town in front of them, and Laura still hasn't figured out that this is not the way to the police station?
Yeah. I don't know. There's lots here that is.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the episode.
Yeah.
I think it's a great episode. Sweaters and skirts. But
literally the only reason he likes the episode. Irish sweaters.
But there's issues.
Let it be known, Eric's top 5 will include baseball pants and Irish sweaters.
What can I say? Yeah, if I seem distracted, it's because I'm watching Sweaters and Skirts. Anyway.
So yeah, they're let out into the car. Laura is arguing that they should at least know who they supposedly killed. They're both shoved into the backseat without any other words. And then we get a scene change. As they're driving, Steele asks the officers which station house he is taking them to. The cop says O'Connell Street, and Steele sits back and tells Laura that O'Connell Street is in the heart of Dublin. They aren't police. So,
well, they might be police, but maybe just a wee bit bent.
Yeah, well, I don't think they are, though. I think they're the two
they're not,
that we see
but
later. Yeah.
But from Steele's perspective, they could just be a wee bit bent.
Laura is surprised, and when the officer asks her what's going on, she lies and says the cuffs bit into her wrist. He tells her they're almost there. And again, it's interesting he can remember the geography of Dublin when he's... And I'm not saying that doesn't fit with how amnesia works. It's just, it's interesting that they're peppering these little details in when he doesn't remember the bigger picture. So, yeah. Steele warns her they have very short time left. As he does, the car pulls up to a train crossing just as the gates to access the crossing are being shut. Irritated, the fake cop gets out and goes to ask the man to open the gate.
Oh,
what?
Come on.
Come on.
The train is coming, and you're
What?
You're obviously not a rocket scientist, because you're not going to open unless you want to drive the car onto the tracks and leave it there with everybody watching.
Yeah. So the city that I live in has a lot of train tracks. Wow, I couldn't remember that word for a minute there.
Train things, where the trains go.
The trains drive on, yeah. It has a lot of tracks that go directly through the city because London, Ontario is older than the country itself. The city's been there for a while, and when they built all the railroads, London and a neighboring town of St. Thomas, Ontario. St. Thomas, Ontario was at one point the railroad capital of the country. Like, there was just so many. So the city kind of sprung up around it. And there's various points where train tracks run right through the downtown core. It's a pain in the hole, especially if you're trying to get somewhere and there's a train and you're stuck behind the train. They just built an underpass under Adelaide Street, which we've been waiting for decades for because that train would last forever. But that also means with all these tracks in the middle of the city, there have been fatalities. You don't mess with the train. Like, you don't try to play chicken with the... And what kills me is, why does it matter if they have to wait? They've got them in the car.
Yeah.
Obviously it's a ploy to get him out so that they can get the other guy out of commission, but
so they can escape. Yes.
Yeah, but it just feels silly because he stands there arguing with the man as the train comes, and then as it's coming, they're still arguing, and you're like, what are you going to do now? Drive right into it?
Sure, why not?
So yeah, as he's doing this, Laura and Steele put their arms around the guy's neck, And I hope they just knock him unconscious, because
Yeah. Well,
yikes. Then they get out of the car and make a run for it, which proves that this is definitely not a cop car, because they shouldn't have been able to open that back door if it was.
yeah. Shouldn't have been. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's obviously just a car that they've made up to look like a police car.
Yeah.
But yeah. So the sound of the train manages to muffle their escape.
But of course, Steele and Laura didn't notice that little detail either.
Well, at this point, they're fully aware that.
Yeah,
guys
but up
aren't
to this
cops,
point,
so-
they didn't notice that. Oh, there's handles on the inside of the back doors. That wouldn't be there. No.
Yeah. Well, there's handles in the backs of our police cars here. You just can't open them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Like they just have them locked up front, so they won't work unless you, like child safety locks, basically.
Oh.
Yeah. But either way, like they didn't try to open them, so they wouldn't have found that one out. But
Okay, fine, whatever.
So yeah, when the fake cops look back, they're already running away into the countryside.
Mm-hmm.
Tries to shoot at them, but misses. Then we get a scene change, and we see them running through the countryside while being chased, and they're
Can I
obviously. Yep, go
ask
for it.
a question.
Yeah.
They run past a sign, and it says max load 0 tons. I have to question the spelling of tons. Shouldn't that be TONNES?
I don't know, because so Republic of Ireland is not part of the United Kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe not. Like they might not use the same British spellings that the UK uses. I don't know. I
would have thought that having been part of the UK at one time, that would have been the standard spelling that they would have still been using. But I could be wrong. I could be wrong. What do I know?
In the United States and the United Kingdom, ton is usually pronounced TON and is blah blah blah. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, and then they're running away from this cop, and they're handcuffed together.
Yeah.
And yet they can still outrun a cop or a supposed cop who has no encumbrances on him. Really?
I mean, I guess they're both fast runners, right? So if they're both able to keep pace with each other, being handcuffed isn't going to be as big a deal. It's not until they try to go in different directions that it gets funny.
Yeah.
But we both know that they're pretty fast. Laura probably slightly faster than Steele, since she runs
Is a
more
runner,
frequently. Yeah.
So, okay. All right.
But yeah, so you're right, though. I don't know about the spelling because, like I said, Republic of Ireland is no longer...
Yeah, but usually after even something like that, where you split off from another country, the language, the spellings, the signage, most of that
you guys were
going to remain consistent.
You guys were part of the UK. You changed all your spellings just to be petulant. Color has a U in it, sir.
I know. I'm constantly fighting with my spell checker.
You refuse to get hip to the metric system. Come on.
Yeah, I'm always spelling favor with a U too. So
you should, as you should.
Like I said, my spell checker and I don't get along all the time.
Oh, mine don't either, because it's always telling me that I'm spelling color wrong, and it drives me up the bloody wall.
Anyway,
so they're running through the countryside. They're being chased. They run over a bridge, then down onto the shore while they hide in the bushes. The fake cops come onto the bridge. They look around. They don't see them. This is stupid. They move when the cops are still on the bridge.
Yeah.
It just, like, if they'd waited a little bit for the cops to walk away, they probably wouldn't have gotten noticed. But like Laura yanks one, or Steele yanks one way, Laura pulls the other way.
Mm-hmm.
So he exasperated says that someone needs to lead, and she goes, "Right, follow me." Presumably he knows. I mean, he might not know the exact area they're in, but he knows that he knew that they weren't going the right way when the cops said O'Connell Street. So presumably he knows the area slightly better than she does.
Yeah.
You'd
but
think
he may be the boss, but she's in charge.
Yeah, that's true. So the fake cop spots them, shoots at them again, and starts chasing them. They run through the river. Fake cops still hot on their tails. They manage to get away again. The other fake cop pulls up in the car, and his partner gets in, and they continue after them in the car. And as they run through a field, Steele makes a comment about the right hand not knowing what the left is doing, which this shtick is funny with them being handcuffed together. I do think it's amusing. And being stuck together is worse than being married. Ouch.
Ouch.
They go over a stone wall. Fake cop finds them again. Steele shoves Laura down and they hide. That's funny. She tries to stick her head up. He shoves it back down.
Yeah. She comes up with a stick in her mouth.
I do like that. They lean up against a tree and he suggests a truce before his arm leaves the socket one more time. He points to a farmhouse in the distance, to which she agrees, and they make a run for it. When they get there, they try the door, but it's locked. Obviously, they don't have their handy lockpick kit on them, so Steele gives her a boost, and she climbs through a small window of a stone building.
Although, I had to, from the looks of that door, it almost looks like they could have kicked it in easier than crawling up through the window.
But if they kicked it in and somebody was home, then they'd have to explain why they're kicking a door in with their hands handcuffed to each other.
That's true. I guess that's true.
Probably don't want to have to do that. So, yeah. Steele gives her a boost, then he climbs through the window of the stone building, stopping at the top as he does the same. Inside, they find themselves in the hayloft. Steele comments on how it stirs up some happy memories. Interesting. But a noise outside causes them to duck down. The fake cops come in one more time and look around. One of them grabs a pitchfork and starts stabbing at the nay. The nay. The nay. I wrote the nay. The hay. Not the nay. Sorry, I got to change up my notes.
This is how words get started, people.
This is how words get... They stab at the nay. Nay. Stabbing at the hay. Narrowly missing Steele and Laura. I can imagine that would be slightly terrifying to see that pitchfork come up. They eventually determine they must have gone back to the road, and they leave. Thankfully, Steele does not get impaled. They sit up, and he says they better wait until dark, and then cites an Audrey Hepburn movie. So we've got another movie reference here. Laura asks if it's another clue. He thinks it just popped into his head. She's not happy, but he insists it's not all bad. He says soon she will do her Madeline Carroll routine. She's confused, and he cites the 39 steps where the two leads are on the run, and Madeline Carroll removes her stockings one by one. It's interesting what he thinks is going to happen here with the two of them handcuffed to one another.
Well, and the thing is, they do kind of start to make out, and I kind of... I'm sorry, a pile of hay doesn't really seem like a good place to make out to me.
No, it does not. It's like the beach. Anytime I see these scenes on the beach, I'm like...
That was what I was thinking, too.
You bring the beach home with you. No matter what you do, you bring the beach home with you. Kira and I went to the beach the other day, and I swear we toweled ourselves off and whatnot. I still have sand in my beach bag. I don't know where it came from, but it's there. Like, do you really want sand getting into the
sand in other places?
Like, no, thank you. So I'm going to agree with you on this. Hay would be deeply uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, gross. No, thank you.
Yeah.
So, annoyed, Laura crosses her arm, which causes his hand to grab her leg. She puts it back and she tells him she's wearing pantyhose. He says love will find a way and suggests they renew their close acquaintance. She tells him that they have never been
Pablo
together.
Cruz.
Yeah, right?
I'm sorry. I just the songs are popping out of my head. I'm sorry.
I know. It's okay. Yeah, she tells him they've never been together, but he says, do you mean to tell me in all the time we've known each other, you don't want me as much as I want you? Which is pretty close to what he said to her in Tempered Steel. Right? And when he suggested they hop in the sack, and he says, crudely put, sort of thing. And she hems and haws here, but she doesn't say anything, which he takes to mean yes. And then she tells him it's a long, complicated story. And he says he remembers not liking long, complicated stories. So for a couple that's supposedly broken up, she's kissed him twice in this episode.
Yeah. And she hasn't really exactly put the brakes on it in any definitive way.
She has not. So maybe she's thinking plausible deniability. If he doesn't remember who he is, it doesn't count. I'm wearing the plausible deniability shirt today, so I figured
Yes.
I'd insert that in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, they lay down in the hayloft, and as he kisses her, the pocket watch begins to play a tune.
An unspecified generic tune. Thank you.
Yeah. He tells her when he kisses her, he hears music. Confused, she says,
I can
so does
hear
she.
music. Sweet, sweet music. Sorry.
Also, I would
I
like
don't
to say
remember who
that
did that song.
this is an interesting episode to come right after Blue Blooded or before, either way, because you've got all the stuff in Blue Blooded that Daniel says about feeling like he's always been a son to him.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about whether or not they knew what they were doing and whether they were setting something up. But here is where they finally introduce that to the audience, that he doesn't know who his father is, that he's never seen his birth certificate. So I wonder whether the episode aired before or after wouldn't really make a difference with respect to this, but I wonder if they were starting to think about that because they've got this watch. And
if this had shown before Blue Blooded, and then you had Daniel say, I've always thought of you as the son I never had, it would have gotten the wheels in the heads of the fans turning.
Yeah, that's true.
And it might have actually worked in the show's favor in some respects. As it is, by reversing them like this, you don't necessarily make the connection.
No, because it's a week later and you might have missed that episode.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
And it's like, okay, well, a lot of people think of somebody as the son or the daughter they never had. So, that would have been something that, okay, yeah, it's just in passing a comment. And then this, you would see it as a separate event. Whereas if they'd have reversed them or put them in the proper order, you'd have drawn a line. Now, you don't know necessarily if the line is a valid line. It certainly connects 2 points, but you don't know if those are the 2 points that go together. But it would have had people drawing that line and saying, interesting, I wonder. And the fan fiction would have started at that point.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, but I agree with you that it would have definitely hit differently if this had come after. So it's interesting that they decided to switch them. But I do think that this means that they started to at least think about it, because whether or not they were planning it to be Daniel, they've obviously introduced this watch as a clue. Because he pulls the watch out of his suit jacket. She asks where he got it. She's never seen it before. Steele says he doesn't know, and Laura reads the inscription, which says to SJ from KL. She asks who SJ is. He still doesn't know, saying someone who knows KL, obviously. He tells her, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn, then wonders why he said that. She tells him, and the other thing I just thought of, if they're starting to think about his father in some context, or just introduce the quest to find him, either they had a plan for this watch that did not include Daniel, hence the inscription from SJ to KL, or to SJ from KL, or they knew what they were doing with Daniel the whole time, i.e. they knew that this was going to be a mislead, in which case they did have a plan. Yeah,
there's a lot of evidence there that you can read multiple ways. And you can create plausible scenarios for all of it. But we just don't know.
No. But he says, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. Wonders why he says that. She says it's Rhett Butler's last line is Scarlett O'Hara, and then hopes the case had something to do with Gone with the Wind. She's seen it a dozen times. I don't know about you. I've seen this movie. I don't like it.
I've never seen it.
The only person on the planet, but I just found it interminably long, with a protagonist who is so unsympathetic that when Rhett Butler says that and storms out the door, you're like, yes, leave her. God, she's annoying. Like, at no point do you find yourself thinking, oh yeah, I can side with her. Anyway.
Never seen
I
it.
watched it once when I was really sick. I was home from school and it was on TV, and I couldn't get up to change the channel, so I sat through all 3 hours of it. So he starts to freak out with all the movie references, that he's losing his mind. She tells him that she knows how he feels, and then freezes as she feels something below her on her leg. They look down. They see a horsey.
Horsey.
She tells him something just kissed her leg. And he points out the horse has taste. I do like that. Suddenly he remembers the case has something to do with horses, a man named Flanagan, and a place called Carrie Clare. Excitedly, he tells her that's why he came to Ireland, to go to Carrie Clare. He kisses her and then apologizes, which is kind of odd. Like, they were just making out. Not sure why you're saying sorry here. She was on board with it.
Yes.
So we get a scene change back at the mansion. We've got Mrs. Armadale. She is not impressed her men lost, Steele and Laura. Willard points out that there aren't any cops yet, so Steele couldn't have known too much. Once again, she laments that her late husband, Mr. Armadale, is not around to guide her, saying their horses haven't been running well and they're going through a rough patch.
I like her. The interesting thing about this exchange is the horses are not running well. Taxes eating up every little reserve we have. Yeah. And the servant, Willard says, and the servants haven't been paid for ever so long. And she says, is money all that's on your mind, Willard? Well, that's all that's on her mind.
Yeah, well, only until he points out that they haven't been paid, of course. Which I have to wonder, and this question will carry through to season 5, really. How the heck are the servants feeding themselves if they're not getting paid? Even if she's providing them room and board at the house, where's the food coming from? Where are they clothing themselves? How are they, if they're not getting paid, where
if she's got a title or something like that, it could be that people are carrying her on credit. I mean, there's no actual money involved there. So it's not like they could say, well, you're paying him, so pay us instead. No, they're giving her credit on the assumption that she's good for it at some point in the future. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I just find it kind of interesting that you've got these characters saying, well, we haven't been paid yet they haven't quit.
Well, that's a popular thing in movies and TV. Yeah.
Fair enough. I don't know. If my job stops paying me, I quit. Like that's
you can't
crazy,
quit.
But
you have to be fired.
Yeah. So she smiles, like you said, and asks him if money is all he can think about, adding that she's trying to save Armadale stables. Oh, she's so noble. Yes. He tells her tomorrow it will all be over and they can live out their lives in quiet splendor. She's not convinced and tells him to have Clancy and Foster keep following Steele and the girl, adding that Mr. Armadale always said that it was better safe than sorry. It's good that Mr. Armadale left her all this wonderfully murderous advice.
Murder is the solution to everything.
Yeah, pretty much. So we've got a scene change. Steele and Laura have hitched a ride on a horse and buggy carrying junk, or what looks like junk. The man driving the cart takes them to a house. They get off. They thank him.
He doesn't question the fact that they're running around handcuffed to each other?
No, apparently not. Yeah. What I find kind of weird, they get off the horse and then it looks like they just walk in the house. Like, I don't think they knock. Which...
yeah,
like, you'd think you'd maybe get a little knock to let people know you're there, It
was a quick cut.
Yeah. Laura asks if he remembers anything. He points to the dining room table, says that there was a dead man there, and Laura groans, not another one. I do like that she's just like, oh, not another corpse. Come on. And we get a man come down the stairs, and he greets Steele by name. He's kind of surprised to see him. He asks if the man is Flanagan, and he says yes, and repeats that he does know him. Flanagan tells him it was just last Saturday that he was in that very room singing and dancing. He tells Laura they were having a funeral. Steele is relieved that there was indeed a dead man, and Flanagan says yes, Flaherty O'Flynn. Flanagan says that O'Flynn was the finest man who ever bent his arm to a glass of ale, and says they gave him the finest send-off. So that's nice. Makes me think of that song, The Night That Patty Murphy Died. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but... The Night Chicago Died. No. The lyrics are, The Night That Patty Murphy Died is a night I'll never forget. Some of the boys got loaded drunk and we ain't got sober yet, and it's all about how they basically, like, got wasted the night Pat Murphy died. And at one point they sing in the song how Mrs. Murphy said it was time to go, and so they turn the clocks back and tell her it's 9:15. So yeah, just kind of made me think of that. But yeah, Steele asks if he knew O'Flynn, and Laura clarifies that he has amnesia. Flanagan jokes that it must be an unforgettable experience.
That was a dad joke before dad jokes were invented.
It really was, yeah. Steele asks what he was doing there, and Flanagan tells him it was about the watch. Steele pulls out the watch, and Flanagan adds that there was a letter that went with it in his wallet. I do like this. He then pulls out Steele's wallet, claiming he dropped it amidst all the fun, and money must have landed somewhere else. That is, if he can remember carrying any.
Yeah, we know what happened to the money.
Right. Okay, sure. But he doesn't carry cash. It's too bulky, so there wasn't any money in there. Steele takes the wallet and reads the note, which says, "Your father always wanted you to have this," and it was signed Patrick O'Rourke. Laura's invested now and asks if he found him. Flanagan says, before he answers that, aren't they a little uncomfortable in the handcuffs? And he offers to get them out. Here's what I'm wondering. This workspace looks like a garage of some sort. They're in a row house. Those houses are attached to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Where is this little garage?
I don't know. I don't know anything about the arrangements there. I suppose it could be that he actually owns the whole building, and even though they were maybe attached, there was a garage as part of the building attached to it. I don't know.
Well, I mean, row houses are like, they're just like a row of houses that are all attached to each other. They're kind of like, I guess we would call townhouses or condos, but their walls are attached to the house next to you. They're usually, if there's a garage, it'll be in front. You'll see it. And it'll literally just fit a car, if that. Yeah, so I'm just wondering where this is taking place. But anyway, Flanagan manages to snap the metal in half on the cuffs, and then he basically sort of admits that his friends often got into scrapes with the law and would come to them to get out of their cuffs. Which I think is an interesting profession to be known for. Steele asks about O'Rourke, and Flanagan says he moved on. Laura asks where, and he tells them Dublin, and that he bought himself a cinema, which obviously makes sense as to where Steele woke up. He manages to get her out of her set of cuffs. As he tells her this, Steele asks if it was the Bijou cinema, as Flanagan works on his handcuffs, and he says yes, asking if he got there. Steele says he did, that he went in, heard a shot, and then was hit over the head. Laura, looking at a nearby newspaper, asks him about Citizen Kane. Steele begins to recount the plot to her, and Laura asks what the name was of Kane's mansion. He tells her Xanadu. Laura shows him the headline, which is that a horse named Xanadu is supposed to race at, and I'm going to butcher this. I apologize to any Irish people listening. Curra? I don't know if that's correct, because if you've ever heard or seen Irish spellings, they don't pronounce any of the letters in the words. I'm not kidding. Like, my friend named her daughter Kiva, which you would assume would be spelled Keeva or some variation thereof. Oh, no. That's not how you spell Kiva. Kiva is spelled Caiomhe.
You know,
none of which those letters are pronounced. That's the C is it. That's all.
That runs in line with something I've thought of a number of times here, because I pick up people that have some, let's say, immensely creative spellings to their names, as you just alluded to. And it got me thinking, and it had me imagining a Benny Hill skit where he is a guy working for a company where he's doing employment applications, and he gets one that he looks at the name and it's spelled James, James. And he says, "Oh, so your first name is James?" And the guy says, "No, it's, Harvard," because that's how it's pronounced. And then he looks at the last name and it's just like somebody dumped out a bunch of Scrabble letters, and he looks at it, and then he looks up at the camera with that face that Benny Hill gets of just kind of this.
Well, I mean, to be fair, in this case, the Irish pronunciation of and the spellings of these names are because of the Gaelic background. Mm-hmm. So, like, in English, we pronounce it Gaelic. Irish Gaelic is pronounced. Sorry, we pronounce Gaelic for Irish. The Scottish is Gaelic, and there's all different other ways to pronounce it. But both languages are descended from 6th century Old Irish, and can be very hard to understand if they speak very fast.
Mhm.
But I'm looking at I googled some ground rules. Gaelic has only 18 letters in the alphabet, so no J, K, Q, V,
Really?
W, X, Y, or Z. A consonant plus an H denotes a completely different sound to the same consonant without an H following it. It has
That
a
sounds
system
like
of broad
English.
vowels, A, O, U, and slender vowels, E and I. So like it just, yeah. So like, yeah, I don't know. This is all to say, I don't know if I'm pronouncing Curragh properly. Probably not. It's spelled Curragh. I could be butchering it, so I do apologize because I'm aware that it probably is spelled or pronounced way different. Yeah. The horse in the photo is the same one, though. According to the papers, he is the world's most valuable horse. I also looked up some stuff on Xanadu, because Xanadu is it's got a bunch of different things going on here. It's the name of Citizen Kane's mansion. It's the imaginary city in Samuel Taylor Coleridge's poem or poetic fragment. It's not a fragment. It's not a full poem, which I'll talk about a little later. And it's also thought to so it's
also a movie.
Yeah, like it's with Olivia Newton-John. Like it's got a lot of different, but it's
been
thought
used
to be
a lot of places.
Yeah, though often thought to be completely fictitious, Xanadu has been identified by some scholars to be Shangdu, which is now the Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region in northeast China. So, but yeah, it has a bunch. It's been used in a bunch of different places. So the horse's name is Xanadu. We get a scene change. Steele and Laura leave the house in a clunker of a car. Steele comments, "It was nice of Flanagan to loan them their cars. They bounced down the road." Not sure nice is the word for it, but sure.
Hey, I mean, if it's what he had and he let them have it and he didn't make a big stink about it, yeah, it was nice.
That's true. And the rabbit is spared yet another episode. So
That's true. That's true.
So yeah, Laura is thinking about the inscription and comments that one of the initials must belong to his father. Steele says perhaps. She's surprised, saying that surely he can't have forgotten his father, but I don't see why not. I mean, even if he did know who his father was, the amnesia would have...
I think Laura's conclusion might be a little bit sketchy anyway, because usually the male son is going to have the same name as the male father. You know, the daughters can change their name typically when they get married. Not all do, but that was kind of the tradition for many, many centuries. But sons generally kept the father's name. So the fact that the last initial on the names in the watch are different, I think she's kind of maybe reaching a bit.
Well, I mean, she doesn't know his name, so...
Right, but SJ from KL, if it was his father, it would probably be SJ from KJ or...
oh, right. I see what you mean. Okay, yeah.
So, anyway.
Yeah. The interesting thing is that in Islamic culture, generally women keep their own names when they get married.
Mm-hmm.
And usually I could be wrong because like there's different countries and Islam is not the same across the board or practiced the same way across the board. But I think if I recall correctly that the daughters typically take their mother's name and that the boys take their father's name. Because I've had students, I used to teach at a private Islamic school and I had students who were siblings but with different last names. I didn't change my name. My daughters got my husband's last name, but only because he was the only boy and like his name would have been gone otherwise. So I gave him that one, threw him that one. But she's got my last name as a middle name, so which is common in Scotland. But yeah, so she says, surely you can't have forgotten your own father. And Steele says he doesn't think so, and that he has a feeling he never knew who his real father was or that he's ever seen his birth certificate. Laura says it would explain the sudden dash to Ireland and that a man without a father is... Steele cuts her off, warning her to be careful. And I will be the first to admit that when I saw this as a teenager, I didn't get that joke. It went right over my head.
Well, I'm sure that wasn't where she was going with it, but yeah.
No, but like even I didn't know where she was going or where he thought she was going with it. So, but this is an interesting way to reveal this, I think,
Mhm.
Because up until this point, every time she's asked him for information about his real identity,
Mhm.
he hasn't told her, or he's hinted that he's not ready to tell her.
Mhm.
Now, when he's stripped of any identity at all, like he doesn't know even where his past, what his past is, or what his even fake identity is, this is where he tells her. This is where he says, yeah, no, I don't even think I know who I am. Like, that's a lot to give away. And
Mhm.
she realizes it, because she says, she sort of smiles, and she says she was going to say a sad and lonely man, and best of all, vulnerable, which he's a little surprised by.
Yeah.
And they get back to the stables. The horse that licked her foot is gone. She's frustrated. Sure, it was Xanadu, and Steele is still hung up on that conversation in the car. He says, why best of all vulnerable? And she says, it makes you more human, simpatico, easier to understand. Right? And that's, I think, all she's ever wanted,
Mhm.
is for him to feel human, for him to feel not like this man of mystery, but a walking, talking person with a background that she can understand and cling on to. But it's interesting that he is surprised that she wants him to be vulnerable, right? Why best of all vulnerable? I don't know if this boils down to men and women having, the men are from Mars, women are from Venus, but we want to see vulnerability. We want to see.
You know, that reminds me, I think it was a Home Improvement episode where Tim and Jill were talking, and how she's talking about kind of the same type of thing that you're talking about here, and that they're talking about how, women want a man who's sensitive and caring, and Tim's comment is, yeah, women always say that, but then they end up going with somebody like a kickboxer named Rolf or something like that, and it's, I think you have to be careful, because people do say, I want a, but when you look at what they actually do and what they actually go with and end up with, and you see what they really, really wanted, it's not A, it's B.
I mean, that definitely can happen. I don't think that doesn't happen, but I don't know. I personally would not want Rolf. I wouldn't want the kickboxer named Rolf. And I think it's more about understanding or knowing that your partner is willing to offer up a piece of themselves that makes them human, as Laura said, or that just shows where their I don't want to say their weak point is, because that sounds like a like
except that, yeah, that's how it comes off as oh, okay, so that's all you are, huh? I should have known that.
No, I mean, like, I didn't want it to make it sound like she wants to know the weak point so that she can attack it, but like, just to know that there are human frailties, or that, like, you're not perfect, because nobody wants, or at least I wouldn't want to be with somebody who doesn't have any flaws, or that doesn't show those flaws, or doesn't show those weaknesses, because then you can't relate to that. There's no way you can relate to somebody who always seems to have, or to be in control, or to have it together, right? You want to, I guess you want to know that your partner is a bit of just as much of a mess as you are. So, in Laura's case,
no comment.
she's got that part of him now. She knows that there is a sad or lonely boy trying to find a father, which she's grateful that she knows about. She says, now that I know your father, and then he cuts her off saying, walks with a crutch, wears a mustache, cracks wise. Your father was Groucho Marx. And then he clues in, telling her about the sign in the cinema that points the way the whole time, only he didn't connect it until now. She still looks confused, and he says a day at the races and grabs her hand. So now we go to the racetrack. They make their way through the crowd, and they see a man making odd gestures with his hands, and Steele tells Laura he's a tic-tac man, not to be confused with TikTok.
And not to be confused with the small white mints.
Yeah, the little white candies. Yeah. They signal the odds to the other bookies so they can raise or lower the price accordingly. Laura asks if they've ever heard of a telephone, which, I mean, if bets are taking place like that minute, telephone wouldn't get it done. So this it reminds me of the stock market, right? Where you're making all the little hand gestures to, yeah. They look up the sign that lists the horse racing and see that Xanadu had been scratched. Steele tells her that means he's been pulled out of the race, and Laura says it might mean more than that. Meanwhile, we've got Mrs. Armadale approaching a man who we learn is Xanadu's owner, and she's got the worst faux sympathy on the planet. Like, oh, it's so awful to hear about Xanadu. You're so strong. Like,
I have an issue with one of her lines. If anything like that were to happen to me, I hope I'd be half the man you are. I think being half the man. I think being the man he is would be a step down for her in her mind.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so she's laying it on thick. He insists it's just a touch of colic. You're so staunch and brave, and like you said, that's where she said, if anything happened, like, I hope I would be half the man you are. He's confused and tells her that he isn't following her, and she tells him that she knows what he's going through, that she got a call from someone who threatened horrible things to Xanadu. Mr. Carter asks why they would call her, and she says that they no doubt know the position Mr. Armadale held in the community. He asks what they want. She tells him, 8 million, or you will never see Xanadu alive again.
And if the guy is not suspicious of her at this point, right? He deserves what he gets.
Exactly, because she says it in such a, like, you'll never see him.
Well, and there's just the fact that they called her instead of him. You didn't do that.
That would never happen. If you're looking to ransom, yeah. She would have been better off just getting one of her servants to call him themselves, and that way it's a male voice, not a female voice. But
she has to be the center of attention. She's got to be the one to deliver the message and see his face when she says, "You'll never see poor Xanadu again."
I think you do a better Mrs. Armadale impression than I do. Maybe she is half the man she's anyway.
Don't look under that skirt. You may be disappointed.
She is very, broad-shouldered. Mr. Steele and Laura, they're in the parking lot where they see a horse trailer labeled TARA, which stands for the Armadale Racing Association. It drives away. Steele is frustrated. A very expensive Rolls-Royce pulls up, and an elderly gentleman in a top hat. Like, come on. He looks like the Monopoly man. And he gets out with a leggy blonde who's like a quarter of his age. Steele pretends... Yeah, that's true. If you're in a top hat, I guess that's what you get. So Steele pretends to be the valet and takes the keys. Laura points out they're stealing, and Steele tells her, well, he promised to park his car, and he will later.
He didn't say when or where.
Yeah, he was going to say he didn't promise to park it back where he got it from. So, we see the horse trailer driving through the countryside. Laura and Steele follow until a flock of sheep in the road causes them to stop. Laura's frustrated and says it never happens in LA, but I'm going to tell you it happens a lot in the UK. I can tell you 2 separate stories where when I went through the Highlands and in the Republic of Ireland, obviously, because they have very similar farming cultures and whatnot. But like, I remember I was on a bus tour through the Highlands and we had to stop because there was a Highland cow standing right in the middle of the road. And if you've ever seen one of these things, they're big and hairy and they have like those horns on their heads and like they're nothing to mess with. And we were sitting there and eventually one of the people in the tour bus said to our tour guide, like, can't you just move him? And the tour guide was like, you want to go out there and move him? Like, no, we wait until he moves. And then we, and there's
have similar things with moose.
Oh, yeah, because there's moose in Canada too, right? So, like, if there's a moose in the middle of the road, you wait. Yeah. That moose will go when it's ready, right? Or even Canadian geese.
And if you want to make an issue of it, you lose.
Yeah, exactly. Even Canadian geese, because those murder chickens will come at you with everything they have.
I hate those things. They will... Up here, they'll just swarm across the road and they won't move for you.
No, and if you, like, they will come at I had one come at my car once. Evil little cobra chicken just came right at me. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And my husband's like, we're in a car. And I'm like, still, he's scary. So, yeah, there was another instance in the Highlands. We were driving up the Isle of Skye and there was a sheep sleeping in the middle of the road, like just sleeping in this little patch of sunlight. And every car, I watched this happen, every car that pulled up had to get up, and you can move a sheep. They're not, right? So people would get out and move the sheep and drive past, and then the sheep would go and sit right back down, and the next car would have to do the same. I watched about 4 cars do it. So it was like, yeah, that seems about right. I guess he's like a cat. I've got my little spot with the sun. I don't want to move. So, but yeah, so she honks the horn, and the farmer ushers them off the road, and they continue to follow, but they've kind of lost the trailer. Inside a massive estate, we see Mrs. Armadale pouring champagne. At least she's pouring champagne for the servants, and the 2 thugs. That's nice, I guess.
That'll keep them until they get their pay.
Yeah, exactly. Willard is surprised that the old man went for it. Mrs. Armadale tells him that Mr. Carter sees great value in the horse. She adds that he is owned by a consortium and that they're all capable of raising large amounts of money very quickly, which is good because $8 million in 1984 is no small chunk of change. So, and then Clancy asks if Mr. Carter suspected her, and she asks, why should he? After all, I'm just a doddering old woman. They toast her late husband and the Armadale Racing Association. Meanwhile, Steele and Laura, having lost the horse trailer, see the estate in the distance. They decide to stop and ask anyone if they've seen it. They pull up right outside the front door and hear a horse whinny in the distance. They follow the sound and find the stables where Xanadu is in one of the stalls. I gotta say, my daughter just started taking riding lessons. Those are the cleanest stalls I have never seen. First of all, like, usually horse stalls, and there could be different types of stalls, but usually what I've seen, they're barns, and they're dirt floor covered with hay, or this is like cement.
Well, I'm trying to think. I don't remember the details, but I do remember reading, maybe it was a TV show special, whatever, about somebody who built, you can't say it was a barn. He basically built a mansion for his horses to live in. I mean, and it was the type of thing where if you drove up to it, you'd say, wow, this is a huge mansion somebody lives in, but it was built specifically for the guy's horses. And they just wandered around. I wish I could remember the details, but yeah, I think it was either in England or may have been in like Germany or Austria or something like that.
Right.
But yeah.
I mean, it's a fancy mansion.
When you got money, I guess you do stupid things because, hey, I've got money. I can do it.
Yeah, I'm just saying they're awfully clean stalls. Steele opens the horse stall and begins to quote Samuel Taylor Coleridge's famous poem, which I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I just did a little Google on it, and the main theme of Kubla Khan is the nature of creativity, right? So, and he never finished it. Coleridge claimed that he couldn't finish Kubla Khan because he was interrupted by a person from Porlock. Sure. And when the person left, Coleridge could not remember the end of the poem, so he published it as an unfinished poem.
A person from where?
Porlock, wherever that is. So, yeah, I have no idea where that
was. Was it like another planet?
Well, it might have just been a city that got renamed, right? So, but yeah, so it's about the nature of creativity, that Kubla Khan has created this pleasure dome in Xanadu, which is obviously why Citizen Kane named his mansion Xanadu, that preserves the beauty of nature while shielding its inhabitants from the cold vastness of the outside world. So that's kind of where that's poem is. So Steele starts to quote it. Laura hears a noise, looks out the stable windows, and sees 2 thugs heading towards them. She shows Steele, and he says, leave this to me. And I do like this. He goes to the side of the door, assumes what he thinks is a martial arts stance, and then he asks Laura if he's a karate expert. And she says, I've never seen you use it. So he grabs a shovel instead, preferring the blunt instrument routine.
Yes.
She does the same with a brush. The first man comes in. Laura hits him. He falls. The second man attempts to attack her, and Steele hits him with the shovel. Obviously, the very convenient TV clonk, and they're out, despite the fact that he only hit him on the back.
Mm-hmm.
And in the distance, we see Willard walking, loading a shotgun. He notices the Rolls Royce. With the 2 men knocked out, Laura knows that others will be coming, and that they have to get Xanadu out of there somehow. Steele says they can't use the Rolls as it will wreak havoc with the upholstery.
No kidding.
Never mind the fact that you could not fit a horse in that car. Like, no way.
Hey, I mean, if you can fit 27 clowns in a car, a little small clown car, why not?
Yeah. Steele then gets a look on his face suggesting he has an idea. Meanwhile, Willard has shown Mrs. Armadale the rolls, and the two of them look at it in confusion, as just then Steele rides by in a carriage being pulled by Xanadu. He waves to them as if he's just out for a ride, and at first it works until they realize what horse he's got with him. Laura is in the cart, and Steele's kind of urging him on with the whip. I gotta know how, A, he knew how to tack and hook that horse up so quickly to that cart, because that is not, again, with my daughter doing horse riding lessons, and he's not just, I mean, he doesn't have a saddle on, but he's hooked to the cart, so you have to put the bit and the bridle and the
It takes a few minutes.
Like, does he do this normally? Where did he learn that? Not only that, like, he's driving the horse too, which is an art in and of itself. Like, you don't just say, "Go, boy."
Oh, you don't, huh?
No.
Okay, I thought you did. Just have at her.
Yeah.
Go left, go left, go left.
Yeah. Mrs. Armadale and Willard jump into a Land Rover. They begin to chase them. Willard aims the shotgun and fires, and then, of course, she stops him and reminds him of the horse's value. In the cart, Steele is urging the horse on, saying this horse can run, and lamenting that they don't have a quid riding on him, and Laura looks back and says that they'd lose because they're gaining on him, which they would. They're in a car. I mean, there's a reason why they refer to a car's power as horsepower.
Mm-hmm.
That Land Rover would, no matter how fast that horse ran, that Land Rover would catch them.
Well, so. I've got a question about that. I'll wait and save it for just a minute or two when it's more appropriate. But okay,
sure. Yeah. Okay. So Steele tells her to go to the back of the cart and throw the oil drums in their path. She tells him there aren't any oil drums, and he says, well, there were in From Russia with Love, which I do like. They see a downed tree branch in their path, and Steele diverts the horse away from it. As he does so, the cart hits a pothole, and Steele falls backwards and hits his head on the cart. There's like a back door that opens, and he almost falls out, but Laura manages to grab him and pull him back inside. He's kind of still knocked out, so she takes the reins. Apparently she can drive the horse too. Apparently. Yeah, and continues to drive the cart. Steele wakes up, looks a little surprised. Laura slows the horse down to a stop near the road where the sheep were and gets out.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I had a feeling it was here.
In the earlier scene of this sequence, we saw the Land Rover not that far behind the cart.
Yeah, it was catching up pretty quick.
And they were catching up. And yet when they get to this little bridge and the sheep, we see back behind them and there is no Land Rover to be seen.
No.
And she has enough time to hop out, hop over the stone wall, down the gully, up the other side, get behind the sheep, shoo them onto the road, and then get back into the cart, and then take off all before the Land Rover shows up. Yeah, time sequence issue here.
I'm just doing this. waving my hand. But yeah, I get a kick out of the fact that they stay to watch, like. And also, those poor sheep. Like, she gets the sheep into the middle of the road, I guess hoping they'll hit the brakes, but if they don't, she's just killed that farmer's poor sheep. Like, that's
I guess Laura's defense is, well, I didn't do it.
Yeah, right. As they watch as the Land Rover comes down the road and hits the brakes, swerving to avoid the sheep and crashing against the bridge. We see Willard and Mrs. Armadale kind of stumble out from underneath the car. And then Steele looks at Laura and tells her that he remembers who he is. Laura's surprised, saying that Mildred was right about the clunk on the head. He agrees and says it's a terrible disappointment. She asks what is, and he says to remember that we are still just good friends. Laura smiles, gets in the cart, and they drive Xanadu back. I mean, she did kiss him. Fairly willingly. And she did in the Blue-Blooded episode right before that. So I don't know. She's not doing very well at this whole Steele good friends.
Yeah.
So just saying. We get a scene change. They're outside the police station. Mrs. Armadale and Willard are being taken inside. As Steele and Laura exit, Mrs. Armadale sees Steele and tells him that if her husband were alive, he would give him a good thrashing.
Yes.
Do you love the look on Steele's, like the facial expression that Steele gives her? Like,
Yeah.
oh, it's quite funny.
Yeah.
Brosnan just sort of like kind of imitates her. And yeah, I don't know. I thought it was funny. He and Laura I love the sweater that she is wearing here. Speaking of sweaters and skirts, I think the sweater is gorgeous. We've already talked about leather suit jackets, how I think they look silly, but this one's got these weird zippers and it's not just it's a whole trench coat. What is he wearing? Oh, no. Where did he get it? Did he go and buy it? Like, did he find his luggage? I don't know.
Yeah.
If he bought that.
Yeah, he's company credit card. He went and bought it, I guess. I don't know.
That's painful that he spent money on that.
Yeah.
Anyway, they continue to walk to see, and then they see that Flanagan is waiting for them. He tells him he found Patrick O'Rourke for him, and Steele looks hopeful. They drive up to a small house. Laura and Steele get out of the car, and inside they can hear fiddle music. Steele comments that it sounds like they're having a party, and Laura kind of suggests they might be waiting for him, the return of the prodigal, which, I mean, obviously not, but it's a nice thought, right?
Mm-hmm.
He likes that idea, and he gestures for her to come with him, and she shakes her head and tells him this is his moment. The one thing I will say I like about the so-called freeze that happens in season 3 is that we get a lot of episodes where they build their characters and they understand each other more without that added complication of the relationship. Like here...
Yeah, but they could have still done it if they'd wanted to, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Good writing, you could definitely do it. But I see it as an opportunity that they use to kind of get to know each other a little better. Because she tells him this is his moment. She recognizes that this is something that if he kept it from her for so long, means something to him. It's very private. So she urges him to go alone. But you can see on her face, and this is a beautiful moment from Stephanie as he walks away, that she's really hopeful for him. That she, there's a range of emotions that sort of play across her face. It's really well done. And you can see she just really wants him to get what he's looking for. He approaches the door. He knocks. Nobody answers. And I guess this is a country where you just walk in. He lets himself in and makes his way into another crowd of people in what is clearly another wake. The man in the coffin in the room is the same man that was killed in the movie theater. Steele grabs a man nearby and asks if the corpse is Patrick O'Rourke. He says yes and asks Steele if he has friend or family. And his face just falls and he says he wishes he knew, which that's unfortunate. He makes his way through the crowd. I get that they're at the end of the episode. They're out of time. They can't really have him sleuth at all. But you'd think that if this was something he'd come all this way for, he'd ask a few other people about the watch.
Yeah, but, at a party, that maybe not be the best time.
True.
Simply because, first of all, half of the people there probably wouldn't even want to answer the question. And the ones that did,
wasted.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, they would give you a convoluted kind of broken up story because they're not really
true
in a condition to focus. We'll put it that way.
Fair enough. So yeah, he makes his way through the crowd, takes one more look at the pocket watch before leaving the house. Laura sees him, crosses the street to go to him. And again, you can see the look on her face when he comes out. She really wants this for him. He tells her it was a dead end, looks at the watch again, and asks if she's ready to go home. And she says yes and takes him by the arm. And I really love this ending because there's no dialogue here, but there's very much a visual of communication that happens beyond the dialogue, right? She sees that he's upset and she doesn't say anything because there's no platitude that she could give to help. And it's just a silent gesture of support and they go back, which is nice. It's a really nice ending. So, yeah. Any other thoughts?
Episode had some issues, but, I still overall, I like it. It has its good points, its moments. So yeah,
I think this episode and Maltese Steele rely very heavily on the locations for the story, because I mean, which isn't to say the episodes aren't good, the plot's not good, but they're basically doing what I like to call location porn. Right, you're watching it going, oh, look how gorgeous that is! Look how gorgeous that is! Like that's you're just looking at this beautiful Irish countryside, and honestly, like Ireland and Scotland have some of the most beautiful views of like rolling hills and like lush valleys and just the green space that they use to their advantage in this, because they spend very little time inside the city. They take advantage of the beautiful countryside and really
right. I mean, if you're going to be there, you might as well take advantage of it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the end of the episode. I this is probably one of my, like, out of the 6 we've watched so far, it's probably one of the ones I really enjoyed the most. I mean, they've all been good so far. I don't think we've had any real stinkers so far, but
no.
Yeah. So. Yeah, on the website, www.SteeleWatching.com, we've got show notes and links to a long list of movies on Amazon US and Amazon Canada, as well as links to merch, other ways to support us. So check that out, as well as our social media resources, such as
the links to the official Steele Watching Facebook page, the official Twitter and Instagram pages, and then, of course, the link to the unofficial group of ours, which is the official Steele Watchers fan group. Yeah. So, yeah, that's there too.
Yeah. Join us.
Yes.
And the next episode will be A Pocket Full of Steel, which I know that... you sigh immediately. I like this episode. I unabashedly like this episode. So I think, we're going to have a good cop, bad cop situation going. So for anybody else who likes this episode, I'm the good guy. Eric's the bad guy.
I'm sorry.
I like it. I don't know. I like it. I'm gonna argue in favor of this one. So
all I can think of is anytime your series is in trouble, add a kid.
Yeah, fair enough, but he doesn't stick around. Like it's a.
Oh, I know, but it's just.
Although they do make fun of that in Married with Children. There's an episode where a kid just randomly shows up in the house, and they ask where he came from, and they're like, "I don't know," and then he just sticks around for the rest of the series. And they do not explain it at all. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it.
All right. Stay tuned, guys. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Hey, everybody. Eric and Sara here. Just a quick announcement to let you know that, yes, we do appreciate everyone who listens, participates, and supports the podcast in whatever way you do. But we wanted to give an extra thank you to those who are so graciously giving to be monthly financial supporters.
We are making live streams of our recording sessions available to anyone who is a monthly financial supporter. So not only can you watch us live as we record our podcast episodes, you will be getting access to the raw, behind-the-scenes, unedited version of episodes before they get officially released.
And Sara, does that include our mistakes and screw-ups and our humiliating?
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
every
it does.
Single one of them.
Every single one of them, yes. So again, this is just an extra thank you to those who are going above and beyond. But whether you choose to become a monthly financial supporter or not, we still love you. We want to say we thank you for your support, your encouragement, and your feedback.
If you want to become a monthly financial supporter, please visit our website at www.SteeleWatching.com to sign up.